Welcome, everybody. I'll go ahead and call this special meeting Thursday, March 20th, 2014 at 4 o'clock to order. We'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for your attendance. And recognize that we do have a quorum present. We have Trustee Graves, Trustee Schwartle, Trustee Baker, and myself. And we will ask, first off, are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to the current agenda, Ms. Kaufman?
There are none.
All right. With that, we'll move straight forward into the budget review presentation by Mr. Mike Chatterson, our business manager.
Okay, so this is number 3 of 5-part series of budget presentations that I have created. And what we're focusing on today are the actual school budgets and the athletic budgets. So it would be, we allocate X amount of dollars to the schools, and they tell us how they want that money budgeted between their different supplies accounts, as well as their athletic programs, how much money they're bringing in gate receipts, how much they're bringing in through corporate passes and things like that that they sell, and then how much they're asking for the district to help support those athletic programs. So it doesn't include any type of salaries and benefits in these numbers. It's only a pure cost of what they're asking the district to help supplement those activities. Okay?
One quick thing I forgot to mention before we get moving too much further forward. This is a work session. It's not as formal as our regular board meeting, so if there are questions, please direct them through me, and we'll get them answered as best we can for you.
Okay, so the first slide is just another little highlight about what the presentation are. These are the school and athletic budgets. Again, these athletic budgets and school budgets and department budgets only represent about 15% of our general fund budget. And it's a very small portion, and what we're talking about today is a little bit over $700,000 to the general fund, so it's about it's a little less than 1.3% of the overall general fund.
But not including coaches?
But are not included coaches' salaries. We'll get into that later.
Okay.
Okay, so like I've said before, the remaining amount of the general fund budget, 85 to 86%, is all salaries and benefits, and we'll get into that into the last section of the 5-part discussion. Okay, and these are only budget requests at this time. These are only the athletic and schools that were requested. Nothing is set in stone. That won't happen until we bring the formal budget to you in May for the June approval. Okay, so the school budgets are developed based on our projections of where upcoming enrollment's going to be at each of the different schools. So what we'll do is take into account any kind of a projected shift that we see. Like, for example, this year we were projecting students moving from Haley and Bellevue to Woodside, and also from Woodside back into Haley and Bellevue to account for the magnet school that's going to happen this fall. We allocate Cary and Silver Creek High School because they have a smaller student enrollment at $185 per student, and they can take that $185 and spend it according to what their needs are for supplies, textbook replacement, library materials, and equipment. And also Bellevue, Haley, Hemingway, Woodside, the rest of the schools are allocated $175 per student based on their projected enrollment for the coming year. And then they tell us how they want those funds budgeted, whether they want, how much for supplies, how much for textbooks, library materials, and equipment as well.
Is that allocation for Cary due to the fact that it's a smaller enrollment, K-12, where it's similar in size to Bellevue?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain point, and there's even an argument for Silver Creek High School because it's such a small enrollment. They don't have a lot of discretionary funds. I mean, when we get into it later, you can see that they only have about $8,300 for all of the supplies and materials that they need throughout the course of the year. So, and it's the same premise for Cary School too. They still have to run that full school on a pretty small budget.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, the individual schools are given a budget allocation sheet that I've uploaded to the website, and it tells all of the principals where my budget projections are as far as student enrollment is for the coming year. And then we allocate that enrollment based on $175 a student. And then they fill out the form and give it back to me on how they want that allocated throughout all of the different supply type categories. You'll see that when we get into the bigger schools, because they'll have 30 to 40 different supply type line items that they want that money budgeted, whether it's art or math or social science or music or all of the different departments. Okay? All excess funds in the schools are allowed to carry over from one year to the next year. That's different than the departments and the different programs. None of their funds are allowed to be carried over from year to year. The schools are, in case they want to accumulate money to buy a new computer lab or some type of a large type of a purchase that they're saving money for. So we allow them to carry money over from one year to the next year. Okay? So we'll get into Bellevue Elementary School. And this is the same setup as we've had in the prior, is every year we allocate so much money, and you can see from fiscal year 2010 to 2011, throughout the course of the years, and in 2014, 2015, the budget amount's going down to $47,006. That's based on the student population that's shifting from the Bellevue Elementary School into Alturas Elementary, so they're going to have less students next year than they did this year. So that shows the decrease in the number of student population there. Okay?
Mike, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Will that then, it's probably on another one of your slides, will that then show up in the Alturas budget? If their enrollment's going up?
Yes, it will. Yeah, the complete opposite will reflect in the Woodside budget as well, where their budget amount's actually increasing. Okay, if we have any questions
I just
behind,
have
just let me know. So.
Back to the $185 and $175 per student.
Yes.
Has that remained the same for the last 5-10 years? Has it gone up significantly?
It hasn't, yeah, it's been the same for the last probably at least 8 years, and more than likely 10. I can't remember the last time we had any type of an increase in supply allocations. It's been the same for a long time.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so here's how Bellevue Elementary, when they sent their budget request, and you can see the actual sheet that they sent back to me on the website. So, for example, Bellevue Elementary School, they took their allocation of $47,600 and budgeted it between those different categories: textbooks, equipment, media supplies, general supplies, art, English as a second language, music, PE, technology, reading lab, preschool, then all of the grades, kindergarten through 5th grade, speech and language department, extended resource room, the resource room, social workers, and the gifted and talented program. So they have a separate line item account number for every one of those categories. Okay? So we move on to Cary Elementary School. Here's their 5-year program, and you can see that their budget has been stable for the last 5 years at $30,400 per year. And they've chose to, yeah.
So we're setting the budget now based on projections. Once the actual enrollment numbers come in the fall, does that budget change based on actuals?
Only if it increases. If it decreases, it does not. Only if it increases. Because
So if you had, for some reason, a 50 kids decrease in a school, you wouldn't reduce that budget?
not till the following year, we would. But we let them hold the budget because they built their budgets and all of their requests from the staff based on the number that we're providing them.
So they may
now.
have already pre-purchased supplies and equipment and different things, assuming a certain enrollment number.
Yeah, most of the schools, I mean, all of the schools, they'll buy the majority of their supply type equipment or supply type purchases throughout the course of the summer.
Uh-huh.
They'll buy all of that stuff in June, and it'll be delivered in August. And we really won't know the hard enrollment numbers until fall.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of their budget or at least probably 50% of their budget's already spent by the time they know what their current enrollment number is.
Okay.
But if we have estimated low, we do allocate the additional students into their budgets.
There's a large influx in.
In January, we do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So Cary Elementary School, it's the same setup. They also have, they're allocated $30,400 budgeted between those different various types of categories. Most of the schools are pretty generic on the different setup and grades. You'll see some variations between, some of the schools don't have this type of a detail on the account structure on how much they have budgeted. A lot of them, a few of them will just have just a general supplies account, and they'll budget all of their money into that one supplies account. It's pretty much up to the principals and the school how they want this money budgeted.
Could that account for the big difference in the resource room? You know, I'm looking at Cary, $1,900, and I look at Bellevue at 500, and Hemingway at, Hemingway didn't have one.
Yeah, we haven't got the
600
Hemingway.
at Haley. I mean, is there a reason for that because it's lumped in?
It's all the principal's discretion and their department's discretions.
Okay.
Yeah.
This
I mean-
is just how Cary's decided to split the pie up.
Right.
And another school may have different needs and different, a
And
different
whether
split.
and whether they spread this budget out amongst the departments on, as a building,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think probably every different elementary does things a little differently.
Yeah.
I know I looked at my, as a building principal, I looked at my budget every year, and then I would look at each department and see if some of them would spend their money every year and need more due to consumables like chemistry or art. And then other departments would be stockpiling for a number of years, and so it was like, do they really need that much money allocated? Or can I move that to something like science or chemistry if I've got increased numbers there? So there's always that kind of flexibility
Right.
that you need.
Okay, I understand, just, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so here's Hemingway. Here's Hemingway's budget. You can see that they had an increase in enrollment between 2010-11 and 2011-12, and then they've leveled off. And
It's a
here's
good budget
how
for
Hemingway has budgeted their allocations. So you can see Hemingway doesn't have nearly the breakdown as the other schools do as far as how much money they want budgeted into like kindergarten or first grade or second grade. They have it pretty much in the general supplies account. And then, I don't know, I would imagine they probably track it individually by then. I know that Hemingway does a little bit different. They usually spend a lot of their money at the end of the year to buy purchases for the new year. They've just, so they're buying their large purchasing right now that'll be delivered by the end of the school year, and then that's just the way they rotate it every year.
Okay.
Okay, Haley Elementary School. You can see their student population's been increasing and decreasing throughout the course of the last 5 years. There's going to be a student population shift, small shift from Haley Elementary back into the Woodside School, Alturas. So they're going to receive a little bit less money next year than they did this year. Yeah.
I see we have one of the principals in the audience tonight. I just would like to ask you regarding having that discretion, being a principal in our district for a while, how you feel, how is that valuable to you as a principal, having that discretion to use the funds based on the needs of your school? If you'd like to just comment on that briefly. And Laura, do you want to pass the microphone out? I'd like to get your perspective on that discretion at the building level.
That's extremely important because what you're allowed to do is move that money around where the need is, and especially like over the years, if you're buying, for instance, technology, you can save some money over the years to move towards that, or special projects that you have. It's very important because your enrollment changes every year, and the projects that you're working on and the departments, they need that flexibility for that. So it works out very well. You know, we allocate, at Haley, we allocate per teacher, so they know exactly how much. And then we tell the teachers what we buy through the general office. Whereas in Hemingway, they buy almost everything through the general office. And it's just a different way of doing things. But having that flexibility to move. For instance, you'll see, Mike, go to my budget. I assume mine's next. You'll see that equipment budget, we track that. Textbook money, that's tracked over the years to see, our secretary tracks all that to see exactly, give us a rough estimate of how much we need each year and how much we spend each year in that. So we look at that, and then it just gives us a lot more flexibility. And where we do is, you'll see our office is about $30,000. That's where we hold our money, and then as we need special things, we'll move it from there. So we'll use up, for instance, we might use up equipment monies, and then we still want to buy iPads or whatever, that'll come, we'll shift it out of our office money to move that money around. And Mike's excellent to work with on that. Whenever you need anything, we just contact Mike. He just makes a shift, and it's taken care of. So extremely beneficial to have that fluid movement of your money.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Tom brought up a good point. If the principals see change throughout the course of the year, all they do is send me an email saying, I'd like to transfer, $3,000 out of my office supply budget into my art budget. And then I can make that budget transfer them so they can track that as well. So, that's all that we require, is something in writing from them saying, please transfer this budget amount from this account to this account. Yes?
Are there supplies that are common to all the schools that we're able to get reduced rates on and kind of have a central clearinghouse for? Yeah.
We do paper. We do buy paper in bulk as a district. But most of everything else, it's all site-based decision-making on where they want to purchase their supplies from.
Did you see Val?
Val, did you have a comment on that?
I just wanted to say that we do have contracts set up with certain office companies, like Office Value and James Local. So we get the same price because they consider all of our schools together in bulk. So we do get a discounted price for the district because they consider all the schools together, even though the schools are ordering separately.
Kind of the best of both worlds. Great.
Okay. Okay, here's Woodside Elementary School. You can see the big increase in budget allocation for them for next year.
I didn't break it out as much.
And this is what their budget looks like for next year. So again, it's up to the building principal's discretion on how detailed they want to. I mean, we can make it as detailed as they want to, or as fine as they want to. So, you can see, for like example on Alturas, just the regular education programs, they only have 6 accounts that they control. The resource room, the speech and language, social workers, and gifted and talented are all separate type programs. So the general ed is all of 6. It's just building preference on how they want to distribute the money and how they want to see it and budget it. Okay, we're getting into Wood River Middle School. This is their budget lines over the past 5 years. Actually, Wood River Middle School's enrollment's been pretty steady over the last 5 years. That's a pretty tight, $3,000. It's pretty tight over the course of a 5-year period of time, so that's not a big increase of student population. And this is what the middle school's budget is. So you can see that the middle school has a lot more accounts set up and probably a lot more detailed within each one of those accounts. And you'll get, when we get into the high school, you'll see even more detail. So out of the $126,700 budget, it's all broken out in different ways. And you can see, like for example, on the on the middle school and the high school, they have a principal's account that they set up, and it's when people need, or the office account, they need additional money, or things come up through the course of the year, then they allocate money out of the principal's account back into those separate budgets to pick up things that were unforeseen. Yeah.
Mike, one of the categories I've seen consistently in the different schools is textbook, but we buy textbooks as a district. These would be like supplemental materials or discretionary materials that the principals are wanting to add at teacher requests, or what?
It could be that, or it could be textbooks that students lose,
Okay.
that they're replacing textbooks, or if they have a big
Wear and tear.
student population that comes in and they have
They
to
need
buy some
additional.
additional textbooks.
Okay.
Typically, when we buy textbook adoption, I think we buy 5% more than the student population that we have in place to account for any type of a increase in enrollment for those classes that come through that are larger than others.
Yeah.
So this would just be for replacements or just wear and tear on textbooks or supplemental
Or
materials.
potentially supplemental materials.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just wondering what Impressed is.
Impressed is like if the school goes out, and I know that the middle school has a postage machine, but if they go to the post office and buy a roll of stamps, they'll take a check down, and then they'll submit the receipt to the school district, and we'll reimburse them into that student activity account for that Impressed. So it's really a zero clearing account. They pay money out of it, and then they request money back out of one of their other accounts.
For stamps
Could be for stamps.
or mailing things?
Bulk mailing.
For
Bulk mailings.
What did you say? I don't.
stamps for post office.
It's post
Could be.
office.
But you pay for it, so it doesn't really come out of their budget?
Yes.
So, but why is it in the budget?
There may be some other things that the schools want that they just anticipate paying out of the Impressed.
Does Impressed stand for something? I don't, Impressed.
It's postage.
Does it mean postage?
No, it's just
Is
that,
it an acronym?
Yeah.
no,
Like petty
it's not.
cash?
It's kind of like a petty
Petty
cash
cash.
account, yeah. Okay, Cary Secondary, their budget's been consistent for the last 5 years. And I think if you looked at Cary's enrollment over even the past 8 years or so, it's been pretty constant. And here's how Cary Secondary,
Catherine.
What's the division between elementary and secondary? Is it K through what?
K-5, pre-K-5.
So pre-K 5 and then 6,
12?
12? That's secondary, okay, thanks.
that's the way it is for all of the schools other than Cary. Cary is K-6, and then secondary 7 through 10. And the reason the middle school
7
is
through
like
10 or 7 through
7
12?
through
7 through
12.
10 to 12.
And then the reason middle schools is because we went to the middle school concept instead of the junior high. Typically, junior high is 7 through 9, and middle school is 6 through 8, so. Okay. Wood River High School's budget, that's been pretty constant, within $1,000 for the last 5 years. And this is how they break theirs up. So you can see you get a little bit more detailed here. You've got the art, the business program, the debate, drafting, drama, Read 180 program, English department, world language, guidance office, dual immersion, health, family and consumer sciences, student union, math, band, choir, orchestra, all of the music type programs. And then you got like senior project, their office account, the Idaho Digital Learning Academy account, PE, sports medicine, science. You know, all of them are pretty gifted and talented.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, back to the question that Pamela had about Impressed and the office, I don't understand kind of what the difference would be there if it seems like postage would be the office, and I don't quite get that.
This is,
I mean, yeah, it just seems, you know, $9,000, I'm just looking at it for the high school. I guess the petty cash seems like a very amorphous kind of.
Do you know what's in that number, Pete? Do you remember when you were talking with Kelly?
Oh, Pete.
With
I didn't
Impress?
see Pete back there.
I didn't hear.
I've always just been told it's the
Yeah.
postage machine most of the time with the Impressed. If anytime we send out a mailer, we send out monthly postage cards or little updates that show up in people's mailboxes.
Uh-huh.
That's how it's been described to me.
Uh-huh.
Report cards.
Report cards.
Uh-huh. So it's just, I mean, it just sounds like it's just postage. I don't know, yeah.
Pretty much. So Express, UPS.
Okay.
It's postage. UPS, FedEx, other postage.
Yeah, and remember, these are district accounts here, so this is money that we're sending back to the schools. It's like, for example, on the example that I showed earlier, when the schools go buy stamps at the post office and they buy 2 rolls of stamps and they write a school activity check for it. They submit a copy of the receipt and we reimburse their school accounts through this Impressed account to reimburse them for the supplies. So instead of paying it for out of one of the activity accounts that the schools control, they pay for it out of the district account. Instead of us having to issue a check and then they come over here to get the check and take it over to the bank or the post office and get the stamps. It's just easier for them to take a school check to go out and get it and get reimbursed back from the school district.
Mm-hmm.
So in practice,
Going right back.
for the high school at a 9,000, if that's all postage, but we pay for it at the district, at the end of the day, this budget would really be $9,000 less because it's just a holding that's being, so they can buy it at their convenience and then it gets reimbursed. So they're not really getting $9,000, right? Or is it a way to kind of keep them from exceeding that amount that would be reimbursed later? Is that why there is an amount there? Or
They're repaying, how does that work? I don't.
yeah, so it,
They're repaying through the school account. See, each one of the different schools have 2 separate funds that they're drawn from. One that the school district is giving down to them, and one that are like fundraising activities that kids raise money for. It could be through their student activity fees or, you know, fees that we collect through enrollment that they control there. I mean, some of that money would be discretionary money, like money that they receive from Pop Machine or things. And one of their accounts that they have set up in the individual schools is called an Impressed account.
okay.
And the Impressed account is money goes out and money comes in. So it's a zero balance account all the time.
Okay.
And so what this account from the district is to reimburse that Impressed account that sits in the school.
Okay.
But if the district is reimbursing it and the group is reimbursing it, that's what I'm not understanding why every year. Yeah, and I'd love to.
So does Tom.
Yeah,
I
Tom.
don't have a bank account.
Yeah.
My school doesn't, they don't give me this money, and it sits, the district doesn't give me this money and it sits in my bank account and I dole it out.
Right.
Okay? I don't have a bank account like that. I do have an account, you know, all the schools have an account, like Mike has said, like if I have Pop Machine or I do a fundraiser, etc. That's a little tiny separate piece. But when all these things get paid, all this money that you see, this $1,900 for PE, it comes from the district office. It doesn't come from me, but it's allocated to me. Okay? So in the Impress, they've allocated me $2,000, right? But I have to go and actually physically pay the post office or the postage machine the $2,000. So when I do that, what Mike's saying is then they reimburse me up to the amount that I need. So what is it? The Impress account is like, when you refer to it like petty cash, you're right. That's actual money that comes from my school going out somewhere to wherever. You know, postage is the main thing that we pay with it. And then they physically give us that money back into our account. Whereas the other monies, the base program and that, when they order those supplies out of that account, the district pays it. I don't pay it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So an Impress
So that makes a
means
lot, yeah.
it's physical money that I get to utilize, and the district pays me back in that.
Okay.
But it's just held in an account.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah. So this, So this is really, it's a self-balancing account on the school level, but not on the district level, because the district level is reimbursing the school level to make it zero.
Okay, that makes sense.
So is it a contra account at the district level? It must be.
It's not in a contra account because it costs the district money, where it doesn't cost the schools money.
So you're showing it twice then? You're showing it at the district level and then again at the individual school?
No, because the school level is a self-zeroing account. They take the check for $100 to the post office, so they've got going out, and then they request the money from the district, their interest account, to put the money back into the school account.
So it doesn't show as a line item at the district level?
No, it doesn't,
Yes, it does.
because we have to give
It
them the
shows as a
money.
line item in both, but in the school level, it's a zero balance all the time. At the district level, it's just to reimburse them for that money that they're spending.
I can see the confusion that people might have.
I think one thing to point out, the reason why we have the imprest account is because we only pay bills once a month at the district level. And the schools can't always wait that long to get postage and things like that. That's why we have the imprest account set up. So it's a way for the school to access that money without waiting for our once-a-month check run.
So would you,
I don't know if that helps.
so would you say the difference in all these budgets and imprest is, all the other budgets, if there's a purchase made out of one of those budgets, all those purchases go through the district and the district just directly pays the bill?
Right.
But the imprest account is basically allows the schools to, outside that monthly purchase time, buy what they need and then get reimbursed. Would that be the distinction, is what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
But you've only got one cash account, right? Or does each school have its own checking account where they can write a check?
Yes, each school has.
That's what the imprest account is, a small one. That's their small little fund.
Yes,
Yeah.
This is a confusion because when you said you don't have your own bank account, I thought you were talking about Haley not having it, but it actually does.
A small one.
Yeah.
I have a small, like I said, I have a small account for fundraising and things like that I sit on.
Yeah.
Or if for instance, we go on a field trip and it costs the kids $5, let's say. We collect $5 and we then write the check to the organization. So it's very small amounts.
But just to clarify a little bit more. So your account, though, you don't get money from the district. You just have money from your own fundraising. So you're going and getting postage out of your fundraising account.
And then you're
And then you're getting reimbursed from the district account.
Correct.
Yes.
Got it.
And this budget amount is just what the district says we're going to pay up to this dollar
That's what
amount.
I say.
I'm going to need
a year.
out of your budget. You're allocating that portion. Got it.
And if I needed more, I would go to, say, my office account.
And transfer.
The office
So
will
I
transfer it
could
to
put
you.
more from my office into this.
Okay.
So each school has its own separate checking account.
Small
With
checking
funds that
account.
they raise.
Yes.
With funds that they raise
Yeah.
Yeah.
themselves.
Yep. That makes sense.
Each of the different schools,
No,
No.
no. It's just money that they raise from whatever,
Okay.
bake sales.
But they use that for their interest.
Yes. Yes.
For their postage.
They use it to cover their imprest.
if you look at the individual schools, every individual school has their own student activity account. It's their own student activity checking account. And a lot of they have separate accounts just like we do. But it may be for, Mrs. Barron's classroom as a fundraising type thing. Or it could be from wreath sales or fundraising activities. And each one of those separate little funds within the student activity funds are accounted. The imprest fund at the school level is just one of those little accounts.
So every school has its own little checking account, separate from the district.
Yes.
And it's used for,
Day-to-day.
Yeah.
in this particular scenario, impress, which is primarily
Yes,
reimbursement. Gotcha.
yes. Okay? Does everybody understand that?
I'd like to start it.
Call it postage.
Yeah, postage. We keep talking about small sales of wreaths and whatnot, but when you go out and fundraise and you're selling wreaths, it's a big deal. Or candy bars, which are only $2. So we say it's small, but it could be big to any given activity. Those small checking accounts, are those bank accounts ever reviewed? Do we know the balance in those? Because we do have 6 accounts, 6 schools out there.
Actually,
is
we have-
anybody accountable other than the principal? Does anybody know what those balances are?
We actually have 8 accounts, one at each of the different schools. And the way we have it set up is all of the money flows into the schools and out of the schools. They receive all of the money, and they also pay all of the money. But all of the bank accounts, reconciliations happens at this office, at the district office. So that way it gives us a chance to go through all of the checks and all of the deposits to see if anything looks strange. I mean, we would look at each of the physical checks and say, you know, if one of the principals had a $100 check go to him, we would look at that and say, why? To make sure that, you know, the documentation was there that substantiated that purchase. I mean, that's just one of the examples, but, you know, it could be a student teacher or any type of a thing. We're always looking for that type of stuff, and just really auditing that type of, those expenses in each one of those schools to make sure things aren't happening. Like, you know, maybe the principals are paying wages out of their student funds for a teacher spending extra time at work. That's something that we would flag and say, no, you can't do that. So, I mean, those are the types of the things that we're looking for.
Heather?
Thank you. Mike, is that included in Morgan's audit that he presents, that he does for the school board?
Yeah. Morgan also audits every one of those school accounts as well. Our auditor. He's our auditor, our independent auditor.
14,000 that I saw in the budget that's been fairly consistent.
Yeah.
Is that an audit or is that a review?
No, it's an audit, full-blown audit. We're required to have an audit every year.
Internal controls, all those reviews?
Yes. Yes, everything's reviewed.
And they issue an opinion every year?
Yes.
Mike, do we have that on our website?
Yes.
So if you wanted to look at it, it explains the separation of duties and checks and balances that exist.
And who determines that scope? Is that determined by them, by you, by?
It's a joint effort between myself and the auditor.
Okay.
They review all of the different federal programs based on the size of the federal programs, you know, just like a typical auditor. They have certain thresholds. If a federal fund is over a certain dollar amount of threshold, then they have to review that fund specifically. And then the other discretionary funds, they just kind of monitor those like once every 3 years, they'll spot check them. But it is a full-blown review where he comes in and really monitors every transfer that happens between the different bank accounts to make sure everything's going back and forth, and he reviews all of the bank reconciliations and checks all of the teachers' contracts to make sure everybody's valid and make sure that we're not paying people that don't exist and those types of things.
Okay, we got a couple more questions. Kathy's got one, and then we got one here, and then Barbara, okay?
Is part of the scope mandated by the state as far as the requirement of having the audit?
It's
Is
all
there
mandated.
It's
by
all
the state.
mandated?
It's
Okay.
all mandated.
So we can't just say we want this to be looked at and we don't want it to be this way. It's all mandated
No,
by the state?
It's all mandated.
As a fundraiser for the school, in those bank accounts where the fundraising goes, is there a place that I can go and see how it's allocated?
Typically, the fundraising that happens at the school level is allocated according to how which group is actually raising the funds. So, for example, the concessions at the football games. Usually the football boosters are manning those concession stands and selling the concessions. So all of the proceeds from that concession goes to the football program. And the same thing for like the basketball program or the girls' basketball program. All of those fundraising activities stay within those club accounts at the school level.
Okay, and where can we see how that's being spent within that club?
It's actually posted on our website every month.
Okay.
Okay. And then
Can we
Barbara?
pass it to Barbara?
Actually, 2 questions. How many years have we employed the same auditor who's doing these audits?
14 years.
I think Morgan's probably done it for 25 years.
Is this Yost, also Yost is part of the auditors?
That's the firm he works for, yes.
They've been doing it since '87, I know that.
Okay.
So 25 years with the same auditor. Next question, I've seen little items here and there that you talk about getting a discount from local suppliers. I saw $10,000 for printer cartridges. I'm sure there's copier expenses, et cetera. Are you purposely choosing to remain with local suppliers, or have you ever explored the possibility of trying to get a really good deal from a big national firm like Hewlett Packard or somebody else with printer cartridges, et cetera.
You know, that's a philosophy that we try to leave those decisions at the school level. And a lot of those decisions are made at the school level based on the relationships that they have built with those office supply manufacturers. And a lot of the schools would rather deal with a local office supply manufacturer as long as the price is competitive as on a national firm. Those are the people that really support the school district over the years. And so they're trying to help that community back out by keeping local.
That is a purposeful decision to support local suppliers.
Yes.
I was always given, as a building principal, that option, especially, and as a football coach when I was ordering equipment. But I always went through Donley and Twin, because if I needed something, they would drive it up. So if I was missing a helmet or if I was missing something that a kid had to have, I could get it from them. I couldn't get it from Boise. McHugh couldn't get it to me like that. But I knew that Donley came up at least once a week. He had property up here. And so if I needed something right away that was missing in my order, he got it to me, and he got it to me really quickly. So that gave me the option. You know, sometimes the pennies that I was saving wasn't worth the headaches of not having the things I had to have when I had to have them. So and it was the same thing with office supplies. And I'm going back, you know, when I was in the building. But
And I just have to remind everybody, $1 spent locally is $10 to the community. So in terms of supporting our own community, I really, $1 spent locally is worth $10 to the community. So I really support local spending.
and as an art teacher,
The school is a community venture.
as an art teacher, I use Jane's quite a bit.
Yeah, we don't mandate who they buy supplies from. We just encourage that they buy them locally.
All right, any further questions before we move on? Okay.
Okay, so here's Silver Creek High School. You see their budget for the 48 kids or 50 kids that they have in their student population's $8,300. $8,300 doesn't go a long ways when you look at, a school like that. So, if they have something that comes up through the course of the year and they just can't afford it, we'll step in and help them provide, desks or chairs or something that they have or something that they need.
Where they might be doing some science classes and stuff like that, is there any coordination between Silver Creek and the high school where they're so close to share supplies or anything like that?
I don't know. Pete, do you know what kind of shared activities they have?
Mr. Porth, when he went over to Silver Creek, I think had a conversation. He was the department head at the time and had a conversation with the entire science department, making sure that the things that he took with him to Silver Creek were approved by the entire department. His textbooks all remained and still remain at the high school. He was teaching an AP Environmental Science class. Those books are in our book room. And I think it just comes down to just a good communication line. And so if there are needs, I'm sure that Mr. Phillips, who is the current science chair, has worked with Adam this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of give and take on these types of budgets. If I have a principal that comes to me, for example, and they would like to buy a new computer lab, a lot of times they'll come and say, I can pay half of the computer lab if you can find the other half of the money. And we always try to do those types of things to help those principals out, because really, if you look at it, they're helping the district out by making that offer of replacing a computer lab. That's just money that we don't have to spend. And for example, like a lot of times at Cary, there's little projects that they want to do, like the concession stand. Out by the football field, John will come to me and says, if you buy the materials, we'll provide all of the labor to do the construction of it. So, in our minds, that's a win-win for everybody. We get the projects done for very little cost on it, just the cost of the materials. So,
Thank you.
we do a lot of that type of stuff with the schools. And like the playground equipment. When we were approached by Haley and Bellevue last year with the PTA associations, they said, if we raise some money, would the district help us replace those playground equipments? And we did have that with them. They kicked in $10,000 on each one of the PTA, and then the district covered the rest of it. it was playground equipment that needed to be replaced anyway, so it was a win-win for us. Okay, so here's Silver Creek supplies budget. You can see they've got $6,325 in supplies and $2,000 in equipment. Okay, now we're getting into the athletic budgets. So if you go onto the website, I've uploaded all of the actual budget requests from each of the individual schools, so you'll see a lot more detail into individual requests. These are just more of a summary type synopsis of what's going on, but some of the highlights at the middle school athletic program, they're projecting to bring in $5,312 into the next budget year from the current budget year they're in right now. So if you look at the 5-year projection, the amount of money that they're requesting this year or for next year is actually a lot less than it was from last year. And the reason is they're anticipating carrying that money in from this current year. The projected revenues from the gate receipts from all of their athletic events is about $4,095. Their request from the Blaine County School District to help support their athletic programs is $480 for this year. The major expense for the programs are officials and game workers at $5,330. And they're asking for equipment replacement is approximately $2,900. And what we've had them do over the course of the year is to rotate the cost of uniforms. I think all of the schools have like a 5-year rotation basis on the uniforms to where they're continually updating uniforms so they don't get outdated and really old.
Okay, Catherine, did you have a question?
Yeah, so what is the total budget for the middle school athletic program?
We'll get into it.
And Penny Thayer?
Yeah.
What's a game worker?
Ticket taker at the gate and stuff like that.
Yeah, scorekeeper, ticket taker, you know.
Line judge for football.
Yeah, field judges, those types of things. Okay, so here's where you get into the athletic events at the middle school. So for example, they're projecting football revenue next year from $1,000, and that would be primarily from gate receipts. And they're projecting $3,400 in expenses. And like I said, if you go to the website, you'll see the actual budget request where they have that $3,400 drilled down to a lot more detail, whether it's helmet reconditioning, shoulder pads if they need, you know, replacement pants or pads that they have to do, or tackling dummies, or whatever the case is.
Frank, can I just clarify that when you're referring to the website with this presentation, that's available on the home page of the finance department. The other records that we were referring to with the audits are under financial statements.
Yes. Yeah, all of this there's on the finance website, there's a section in there for all of these presentations. And so each one of these presentations, the actual PowerPoint will be in there, and then all of the documentation that supports each one of these line items is also in there. Like, for example, when you get into the departments that we talked about last week, you'll go into those, and they'll be, like, for example, on the maintenance department, they had like a 7-page memo, very detailed on what their anticipated expenditures were and where their projects were anticipated on completing next year, with including in not only this coming year, but the next 4 years on what they were looking at.
So more detail is available on the website under the presentations than the actual PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
I understand on the website you have to have Office 2013, that others can't open it. Like I have 2007, and there's a problem opening it. Is it possible to make it available to like people of 2013?
It should just be a PDF document. Is it trying to open up as something other than that?
We try to look at past presentations, like the past 2 meetings, and the information is there, you can see it, but if you want to move it, to save it, and then be able to open, then
I know they're just saved as a simple PDF file.
So you have to be able to download.
so it was trying to open in a different program. And it says you have to have-
PowerPoint, like this one's in
Yes.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, this is what I'm
This
talking
is
about.
actually a PDF.
This information.
Okay.
I just wanted to, as a matter of philosophy, I would like the district to keep the gate receipts as low as possible, because there's a lot of people in this community who have very low incomes or are close to the poverty threshold. And when I was at the wrestling meet, I noticed families going through, and I could tell that it was hard for them.
I will say with that too, that I have been to other districts' sporting events, and they charge more than we do.
Yeah,
At least from Carrie's perspective, I don't know about the high school. I'll use my past there at the high school, but I know when I've gone down to Dietrich or Gooding or other venues, instead of paying a $5 entrance fee per adult and $3 per kid, I'm paying $5 per kid and $7 per adult.
And I think that, yeah, and I've noticed that too. I think we're in the enviable position to have the money, it's not extra, but it's there, and there is a substantial portion of this community for which $5 per.
Understood.
Yeah, I watched that, and I felt it made me feel.
Understood.
That sounds like a discussion for the board to talk about.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Liz. And more than that, I do agree with you, Liz. And I actually had that experience, and I was a little bit frustrated that, particularly for districts, when we really want the community to come out, then the kids' athletic, not their athletic, but their, what do we call those cards? Activity cards, do not get them into the games.
Right.
And I was a little bit upset the kids had to pay $4 or $5 to go. I wish that they could just go.
Yeah.
Maybe that is a state thing, maybe there's something we can do about, but maybe that is, we're in a good position, Liz, and I support the board looking into that, because I do think that's something we want to encourage. My second question is, athletic administration, is that for the athletic director? What's that? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's for the athletic director himself, and a lot of that would be, fundraising activities that he provides for that. I mean, you'll see on the high school, for example, that number will be a lot bigger because they're getting royalties from the pop manufacturers to actually sell that brand of pop in the concession stands over the other ones, and they'll make poster revenues. So they print out those big posters, and the company will sell advertising on those posters, and then we'll give the high school money back for the sale of those posters.
Corporate sponsorships.
Corporate sponsorships, yeah, season pass type holders, and that would be included in those numbers, those athletic directors' numbers. As well as, more than likely, there's a portion, I'm sure that's probably the case at the middle school level, is each time a student buys one of those student activity cards, that money goes in there and distributed out throughout the athletic programs as well.
And on the website, we can look deeper into how that money is spent. Is that how we look?
Yes.
Okay, Pete, did you have a comment?
Yeah, although this isn't about the high school, I think it's pertinent because two issues were brought up. One, about district events. It is a state requirement that we have to charge. But one example where I think we did the right thing is we sent down the Superfan to the boys' district basketball game in Jerome. And I actually was fortunate enough to be able to chaperone that and be on the bus. It was fun. But the athletic administration paid for all of our students to attend that game. So they did not have to pay to go to support the Wood River High School team. And we actually had a larger crowd than Jerome did. The second thing is we made the determination, Mr. Rady, who's the athletic director, and I, at about the midpoint, maybe towards the later portion of the soccer season, the soccer program just is not very profitable. It's difficult to maintain both gates because you can access from 2 points. And in order to really monitor it well, it almost costs too much. And that's what we found out. It was costing too much. We weren't making enough revenue. So we basically are no longer charging to attend the soccer games.
So when you said the state requires that there be a charge, is that for everyone, including active students?
Yes.
Correct.
That's for district and playoff.
That's
games.
for district and playoff games.
That's not regular
That's
season.
not regular season. That's for the postseason. That's for the.
That's when the
tournament
activity
games,
card
stuff
doesn't
like
work.
that.
Okay, so you're saying that the students are not charged for regular season games
If they have
No.
their activity card, correct.
if they have their activity?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it.
But that's not, I mean, they are charged, like I went into the wrestling, and we were charged.
You don't have an activity.
You don't have an activity card.
Well, But if I didn't have one, if I was just a member of the public, right?
Yeah.
Trying
you
to
are charged.
attend, I would be charged.
We're talking about students with their activity card.
Are
There's
not
no
charged.
charge for them to get in. But, and adults can, if I stand corrected, can buy that season pass for all those.
For everything. Just to follow up, Pamela, while we were discussing, I was on our website, and you are correct that those are not PDF files. They are PowerPoint files, and that's why if you have an older version, it said in 2010 is the version that came up when I opened it, but we can definitely look into making that more readable for anybody as a PDF form. So.
Yeah, these are all PowerPoints, but the actual detail is PDF.
Right, but when I click on to try to look at it on here, it still comes up as a PowerPoint rather than converted. But you're right, the detailed document does come up as a PDF. So the back documentation, backing is PDF, but to go back and review your presentations is not PDF currently.
Right.
So we can fix that. Okay. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Okay.
So you were going to, so what is the total budget? I guess we add up all the expenses there?
What is all the budget?
For Wood River Middle School?
For the middle school? Yeah,
Right.
you would add up
Good, thank you.
those amounts. I'm sure that dollar amount is in the actual budget that they've submitted.
So who does that really fast? 3,600? Like,
It's
so like
the 10,000.
$20,000? Like, let's say all those add up to about 10,
Well,
11,000?
that's 10,578.
Yeah, about close.
Well, it's not
Yeah,
10,005, that's just the athletic administration,
Yeah,
right?
it-
That's not the
Oh, there's no
It's not
total.
intended-
There's no
this-
total.
This is not
Oh.
intended to balance. I mean, that,
Okay.
So the 10,278,
Is not a total.
but the balance,
oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
So are we looking at like 11 or $20,000 with
Yeah.
that?
Or like 15.
No more.
No, because you've got 50, that's
24.
3,000,
On
and
the
you put in
expenses.
another 4,000, another 7,000, I mean, it's about an extra 10 for expenses.
For 4,500.
So 20.
So
20 for the whole program.
Well, not including
Salaries
salaries or
Right.
travel.
and no travel.
And again, what was the athletic administration? I'm fuzzy on that again. What is the expense
Student
side of
activity
that?
cards.
No, but not the revenue side. Oh, the expense.
expense side.
Is handing out student activity cards?
It would also be distributing money out according to those others. If you look at the balances of every one of those other accounts, the negative ones, those balances are being picked up by the expense side of the athletic administration. So the total budget request that the athletic administration is asking
Yeah.
to cover their entire budget is $480.
Okay, so you're issuing cards on the expense side, and you're collecting the revenue for people who don't have the cards on the revenue side. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Is that, I'm still unclear on what
The gate receipts stay with the program. So all of the gate receipts for the football program stay with football.
Mhm. Okay.
And that's the case
Gotcha.
all the way through every one of those. Okay, the expense side is the actual expenses to run those programs. So the difference of the $2,400, for example, in football program is made up in part or in total by the athletic administration in the expense side. So actually,
That's not-
those
that
are
doesn't
just
add to
transfers
10
going
grand.
back and forth from athletic admin to the football program to make that a
That's
zero
1,000.
balance.
That's 34. But Mike, all of those, the
There's
balances don't add up to that 10,000, so what's the rest of
It's
it?
not intended to. It's
Right.
not intended to.
But where does the rest of those expenses come from in the 10,000?
From the revenue that's raised from student activity cards, offset by gate receipts, and things like that.
But the expenses. So,
This is not intended to be a balancing
confused
sheet.
slide.
It's just intended to show, here's the projected revenues, here's the projected expenses, these are the shortfalls or the overfalls on each one of these.
And there's more detail in what the expenses are on that 10,500 in the documentation supporting the.
Yes.
And just really,
So, my question
yes,
is,
sir.
why isn't that, if you've got it listed that way all the way down, okay, so there's a balance, but how come that doesn't work on the athletic administration line?
It may be
Why
a
is
t-
that line different?
It may be a typo. I don't know.
Well, it's not a, athletic administration number isn't a balance of that column, right?
Yeah, that's not like a total.
That's not a total.
Yeah, it's not a total. But it doesn't add up across.
Right.
It would be 300. If it was a request, it would be 300.
There may, well, it's divisible by 9, so my guess is it's probably a transposition on the expense side.
So the athletic administration, if I'm understanding it, on the expense side, is the cost of running all the games and all the events. Is that right? And then broken down on the expense side is just the cost of supplies and stuff per sport. Is that right?
Val has it.
And isn't it?
Okay, that makes sense then. Athletic administration, so that's the cost of running the events, pretty much.
The cost of running events, as well as the collection of the student activity cards, or any type of a fundraising that they do to support athletics.
Yeah, like the ticket takers, the referees and stuff like that, that's paid for out of the athletic administration, not out of the football budget.
Okay, so it costs as much to do the event, to supply the sports as to run the events.
No, and actually, if you look at the budget, the expense side of that includes all of the cost of the officials, you know, any type of game help and things like that. It's all inclusive in there. So if you look at that, that's the total cost of that football program is $3,400.
Okay.
Val had something.
Well, and then Penny?
Just like on the
Get the
athletic
microphone
administration,
from Pete.
They have other costs that come out of that as well that are directly for the athletic director. They have meetings like once a month that they have to go to Twin, like regional meetings. So there is some mileage and some other things that are in there that are not related to the individual sport directly, but related to setting up those events.
Okay.
So there are a few other expenses, and that's another reason why it doesn't wash out, because there are expenses related to being the athletic director at those schools.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps.
Yes. No.
Okay, Penny?
So in the revenue for athletic administration, in the revenue column for athletic administration, that's where the money from the concession stand lies
Comes.
or goes?
Not necessarily.
That's a separate, that's just not here, that's
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you were to look at the high school.
Here's my real question. Whether it's football or volleyball or the basketball program, when I go buy a hot dog, where does that money go?
Okay, it goes into the fundraising of the sport that's sponsoring the event. For example, at the high school, if you looked at the account structure at the high school, they've got 2 separate accounts for the football program. One that's the district supported that we're talking about here. The second one is what we call a club account. Those are for all of their fundraising activities.
So concessions is a fundraising.
It's a fundraising activities. For example, the crab feed that the football team just had last week. That's a fundraising activity. That goes into the club account. And then it's the discretion of the parents group that raises the money and the coaching that decide how that money gets spent out of those club accounts.
And that's the coaches, not the athletic director that manage that account.
It's the coaches and the parents that are associated with those club accounts.
No athletic director is involved.
No athletic director is involved in those.
Like I know for the boosters and Cary who do the concessions, they take and they give some X amount for, say, sweatshirts for the volleyball team one year, and then they'll do something else for the basketball team. They help cover some of the food costs for state track, basketball teams and stuff like that. But they decide as a booster organization how to do that funds up with requests from the coaches.
Okay, we'll move into the Cary athletic budget. Their projected beginning balance is $200 coming into the fiscal year. Their projected revenue from gate receipts is $7,100. The projected revenue from activity cards is $4,300. So the amount of money that they're requesting from the district is $19,200. And the major expenses of their programs is officials and game workers at approximately $11,300, and their equipment replacement is approximately $10,200. That's what they're asking for from next year.
Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, too, for the game workers and things like that, it used to be a flat $10 for doing say, managing the sidelines. After review a few years back, it got changed to an hourly rate because of regulations.
All of the all of the people that are hired outside the officials are paid through school district payroll. Now, we changed that, I think, 3 years ago.
So I just have from the audience perspective, a question. As you're going over these pieces, so this is, we got light blue, dark blue, or gray, a couple, 3 shades of gray here on this report. At the bottom of this one, we have totals. The bottom of the last one, there were no totals. So I was just wondering, from a consistency point of view for the general public, and me being pretty clueless in the general public and not a mathematician or an accountant, it would be really helpful if there was a bottom line total and the format of the presentations were consistent across the board, so that I would know what the Cary School athletic budget was, and I would know what Wood River Middle School athletic budget was, and the high school when that comes along. So just a matter of style, it would be helpful for me to understand. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, through the course of all of these presentations, I'm trying to be as consistent as possible. Now, maybe the one didn't have the totals, but if you look at all 5 of these presentations, you'll see a 5-year trend of what's happened in each one of these budgets. So it's very consistent as far as what's going on with each of the individual department budgets, each of the individual schools' budgets, each of the individual activity budgets, because there'll be another slideshow or another slide later that shows here's the 5-year requests from each one of the different schools for the athletic programs.
Mike?
In summary.
I do appreciate the totals on the Cary school budget. When we put this on the website, is that something that we could standardize with the middle school and high school just for consistency?
Yeah.
Would that be doable?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so Cary's, they're projecting raising $11,600. That would be from various different sources, whether it's gate receipts. Some of the, let me look at theirs actual. Yeah, activity cards and gate receipts are pretty much the primary fundraising activities that support the Cary School athletics. So if you look at the actual budget requests that they have, they'll have income levels for gate receipts and income levels for activity cards. So they're doing the same thing. They're taking all of the activity cards that they sell to the students and distributing those funds out through each one of the different programs. Okay. And we get into the high school. The projected revenue from gate receipts at the high school level is $19,210. Activity cards is $21,500. Booster card sales are $2,470. Corporate sponsors are $12,250. They receive revenues from the creation of those posters and the advertising on that of $9,000. Projected revenue from the Pepsi is $8,500. And the request coming from the district is $46,560. And you'll be able to see that the actual official costs are a lot bigger at the high school level because they have a lot more athletic type programs going on, and they have a lot of student travel related expenses, hotels and entry fees and things like that from the debate programs and those types that are actually doing a lot of travel and overnight stays. I think the baseball program does, the softball program does.
Is debate under athletic budget?
Yes.
It's a recognized Idaho Athletic Association sanctioned debate and speech for both.
Mike?
Yes.
So, like for the high school, the projected revenue at $46,000, is travel included in that?
The travel that the students do when they're traveling to the games or the overnight stays?
Just regular
transportation,
bus
stuff like that.
transportation.
No, it is not.
So like when the debate has a tournament, the bus fee comes from a different place, but if they have to stay overnight in a hotel, say we're in Boise, then that overnight stay comes out of that.
Right, but just regular transportation to District 4 regular,
Just to transport kids to and from the athletic events is not included in any of these budgets.
So can you give me a garden variety, what is included? And pick a sport, like boys basketball, what is $5,000 buying us as far as the expenses?
Announcer, referee, game workers, clock workers, jerseys on rotation, things like that.
Let's go through the football, because
Okay.
I'm right here. Okay. With gate receipts, I mean, they have a projection on, they're projecting for the JV and the 9th grade level at $367.50 per game, and they've got 5 games. They're projecting that, so that's about $7,400 they're projecting for gate receipts for the year.
No.
That's
that
for
was-
all athletics,
He's
this
got
is
it.
football only.
He's reading off his
Football
screen. He's reading off his.
well, and it's on one of the,
Yeah.
it's on the next slide.
It's actually on the next slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the expense side, what are we spending the money on? Is it just the
Officials,
cost to run the program?
the officials, the mileage to get the officials here, we have to pay mileage for those people.
Uh-huh.
We have to pay ambulance and paramedic service on a per-game basis. And then, if you look at the detail, especially at the high school level, it is very, very detailed. There, like for example, in that $12,500 number, they have helmet reconditioning of $1,900. They have replacing 10 new helmets at $250 a piece for $2,500. Helmet accessory kits, cheek pads, helmet chin straps, shoulder pad strapping, shoulder pads, knee pads, practice jerseys, cowboy collars, footballs, and freight for all of this stuff.
Okay.
Replace and repair damaged uniforms. They have a budget number for that. So it is very detailed when you get into the individuals on the PDF files about what their actual budgets are, what they're projecting.
So just one other point of clarification on the budget highlights, it does say student travel-related expenses, hotel entry fees, et cetera, but that's not the busing, that's
No.
just the hotels
That's just the
and fees
hotels.
to participate in a tournament,
Yep.
things like that for travel. Okay, thank you.
Yep. I mean, when you look at speech and debate, those types of programs, there's a lot of overnight travel in those.
Right.
So that's where a lot of those expenses come.
Okay.
And what was the rationale of not including travel in there to know
Mm.
truly what
Mm.
athletics cost?
That's good. Point.
It's just, we've never done that as a district to know what that is. I'm sure that we could track that by individual programs and individual buses, and so I'm sure we could come up with that, but.
That shows up in the bus.
It shows up in the bus
Yeah.
transportation costs.
It shows up in the bus thing. In the bus, he allocates and shows exactly how much he uses for
Athletics.
travel for athletics and travel for field trips, and he has in the bus department, it's all shown there.
Yeah, and truly, to be able to account for all of the travel-related bus transportation back and to and from, then we'd have to set up some type of a system to where the district was actually billing those schools for that transportation. They would pay us back, so, I mean, we'd be a net zero. So, I mean, we would have to create the billing services to take count for it. They would have to create the budget to make sure that they could manage all of that.
Okay, Val first and then Barbara.
Just so you know, the State Department of Idaho requires us, someday I'll get this right. The State Department of Idaho requires us to put a very detailed transportation claim together for our whole transportation department. And even though we don't get reimbursed for activities, we still have to track all of it to the State Department of Ed. So that's another reason why we don't keep track of it here, because it all has to be tracked under those group of numbers that we submit to the State Department of Ed.
So you've got a number.
It's just
We
not
do
rolled
have-
over.
Put it together.
And the bus department actually has a software company that keeps track of all of their times their bus goes out.
Okay, and then Barbara?
Nonetheless, President Reed, that it would be really good for the public, taxpayers, to see totals, not only on athletics, not only on the athletics, but everything. That's one of the problems we've had in the past, not being able to find certain pieces of this budget. Totals, total athletic budget expenses would be good.
Just real quick, and I think to the point of Sandy's point, it also helps me when I know, okay, so how many kids are doing this sport, how many kids are, on a pro rata or per capita basis, how much we're spending for this sport or that sport.
Is that in the backup data?
No,
Does it talk about participation levels?
no, it doesn't.
I guess that would be
Yeah.
very critical if we were considering not supporting a program or having to do cuts. But
Well, and for the future, it might be a nice thing just to be able to see,
How much you're spending per kid
Yeah.
involved as compared to track.
Mike, if there's any way to do that in the future, to put the travel in there and all the expenses, and then to give us that pro rata, it would really be helpful. I mean, I'd feel like I had a better grip on it.
Okay?
All right, 5-year history?
Okay, here's the rest of the high school's athletic events. So you can see speech, drama, debate, $8,800. The majority of that is going to be the registration fees for the event as well as the hotels. And music is the same type of a thing. Okay, so here's the 5-year history of these athletic requests from the schools. So you can see the middle school's been fluctuating up and down.
And it's my understanding that what I heard you say earlier is the middle school budget this year is so low in their request because they're
5,000
have carryover that they're going to be using. And it looks like the high school kind of did a dip and is back up. Do you know what that was in reference to? Was there a significant purchase this year, or was there a significant reduction in the past two to show that fluctuation? Like a 40% increase over last year's budget?
No, I didn't do the analysis on the detail of what actually was over.
Looks like Pete might have an answer to that.
I do know that there was one significant purchase made. We retrofitted the baseball scoreboard, which was, I think the request or the purchase came in July, somewhere over the turnover from one budget year to the other, and it was about $16,500. That's not a new scoreboard, that's just putting new lights
Retrofitting
into
the
the
old one.
existing one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not understanding this. So I just added, I'm not understanding what those numbers represent.
That's what each school is
Requesting
requesting
for
from
the budget.
the district
This year.
for their athletic departments.
Okay.
So like Wood River Middle School's only asking for $480 to run their athletics.
Right.
Where Cary's asking for $19,000 and the high
High
school's
school's
asking
asking
for
for
46.
That's the net.
This is just a 5-year history of how much they've requested each year.
I gotcha, okay. So I wanted to say on an expense basis, in terms of what is the board expending, or what are the taxpayers expending, exclusive of the revenues, I just added it up. At the middle school, the expenses are $20,000 for 675 kids, something like that. And then at the high school, they're $119,000 for 750 kids. It's a huge difference. We're spending. Now, I have no problem spending more at the high school, but 6 times more. I feel like at the middle school, and I've been hearing this drumbeat from parents that there's not enough athletics at the middle school. So I just wanted to point out the numbers do show that that's the case. There's an enormous anomaly, and I just know, I think as the earlier kids get involved in sports, the better. It's, yeah, that's my own personal
Well, I would point out, you
experience.
have almost $25,000 just in activities that the middle school does not have.
Mhm.
Baseball, softball, speech and debate, and drama. Just those alone, I mean, you were talking about expenditure per pupil. Those don't produce any revenue.
Mhm.
They're just flat expenditures.
Mhm.
Just baseball and softball alone at the high school is almost 12,000. And then it's speech and debate and drama at the high school is another
As well as golf.
almost
tennis.
9,000. And then golf and tennis, those sports don't exist at the middle school level.
That's exactly my point, is that we need more of a balance there.
Yep. You know, as well as the soccer seasons at the high school level is longer than they are at the middle school level.
Mhm. All of those things combine to me to make that point that maybe we're deficient in that area.
Yep. Okay.
How is it that high school basketball is just break even? I mean, what is it going on with high school basketball that
Money.
gives it that incredible ability?
People coming
To
in the
be
door,
able to
right?
break even over and above, like, say, for example, the football program,
Expense.
Yeah.
expense of the
Cheap.
programs and the
Shorts and
participation, yeah.
One ball.
I mean, footballs are very expensive.
Yeah, you got a lot more
Sport.
padding and equipment to maintain for football, whereas basketball, you got jerseys,
in an ideal circumstance.
and you've got the gate to cover it.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to look at the gate receipt revenues, football program versus basketball. I mean, look like the gate receipts are probably pretty consistent between football and basketball.
The revenue is,
Basketball games and there are football games.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's usually
Sure.
about 3 a week. My son's in the pep band, so I can tell you, yeah, pretty busy.
Like, for example, on the boys' basketball program, they're projecting gate receipts of the $5,564. And I think they have 10 home games, 10 away and 10 home.
I think football only has, what, 4 home games on a
4 or
good year?
5. Some years they have 5, some years they have 4. And the football, they're projecting 7,400, so those are both pure numbers on gate receipts. Between the varsity and junior varsity footballs games, they have 9 home games.
Is there a record of what it costs for insurance in terms of football? You know, football is becoming increasingly, we're aware that it's high injury, high concussion rates for football, and some schools are saying, well, we do it, so I'm sure that there's insurance involved.
There is insurance. There's a catastrophic insurance policy that we pay to the state of Idaho to cover those kids. Each one of the different schools pays that insurance policy. And on top of that, every student that participates in athletics is required to have health insurance, whether it be provided by the families or they can purchase it through the school.
What's the insurance policy cost for the catastrophic? You would have to, that's for all sports?
Yes.
Not just football separated out?
No, it's for all sports.
But there again, that's an item that is an expense related to athletics, that should be included in the totals.
It's in these numbers.
Oh, good.
It's not separated out though.
It's probably in the detail.
It's $1,400
$1,400 per student
per year
per year?
for all students,
Wow.
$1,400?
for the high school.
But you said that's catastrophic.
That's catastrophic
So the
insurance.
students are expected to cover themselves if they break a leg or
Yes.
correct.
Or they can purchase insurance through the school district, correct?
Yes.
If they don't have it. And it's pretty nominal cost.
Yeah, I can't remember. Val, do you remember what the cost of that insurance is? It's pretty cheap on an
For
annual
itself.
basis.
It's like $80,
Yeah, it's really nominal.
$85.
$45 a month,
And-
and then they can purchase it for however long of a period they need it for.
Yeah.
There's also education grants for those who can't come up with that as well,
Yeah.
or the Education Foundation grants, excuse me.
When I look at these graphs and what we spent over an hour on, these are really small dollars when we look at the whole budget of 55 million.
Yeah.
And what I hear about the bus, I understand now why transportation's not included. And then I'm thinking, facilities not included, because one, you have a field, an outside sport, as opposed to basketball, you have an indoor sport. We don't really know which one's more expensive or not when you have to redo a field for a baseball diamond or a basketball. So that's kind of, and then probably the biggest expense are salaries. So we've spent a lot of time on this nitty-gritty stuff, but I'm still missing kind of a bigger picture. But
And the salaries are upcoming. They're our fifth and final, if I am correct.
And that's, I would agree with that. I mean, we are, we're picking apart a very small part of the budget. I mean, the majority of your M&O budget is in
1%.
salaries and benefits.
Yeah,
This is 1% we're talking about today, right?
Yeah,
1.2%.
1% of the whole budget.
Liz,
Mm.
again, mentioning salaries, facilities, is there a way to put everything together? So there is a total number of what the athletics cost the district. Salaries, facilities.
Is there a reason to?
Everything.
And I'd like to see it broken out by sport, sure. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, we have the stipends for coaches. That would be a very easy number, but when you get into facilities, and then you're showing the,
Then you're trying to split power bills, then you're trying to do
Right.
anything like that to see how many hours the metal halide lights at the field were turned on. It's kind of difficult to split utilities and finite that all out.
and I guess what is the purpose of that unless you're looking to cut a sport or add a sport, and looking at that as a ratio might be more important versus do we really need to know? We have a gym and it's used for 20 different things, and so,
Maybe, as Liz said, also including student numbers.
yeah, I think the student numbers would be useful, just information. Right.
There are some
And we have the
sports that give
stipends, too.
big bang for your buck, like track. There's a lot of kids who do track. It doesn't cost hardly anything. So, yeah, just
Doesn't
to-
produce any revenue either.
No.
That's okay. I mean, you can serve a lot of kids in a real healthy way.
But again, I don't think we're looking to reduce any of these programs, and so
Right.
I think it's important to understand the cost to a degree, but to get into the nitpicky of cost to maintain lights or fields, is there a purpose to doing that other than we know it's being accounted for as a whole as far as the maintenance of our facilities in general? Do we need to know that distribution? Is that really valuable information that's going to allow us to form a judgment or make a decision on?
I didn't mean it had to be every nitpicky detail.
Okay.
You're saying, but generally speaking, it would be nice to have
I agree.
an overall big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the personnel involved, definitely, that's a big expense.
Right, so it would be the coach's stipend is pretty much the only thing that's not included?
Well, and the transportation. You
And the
have a bus
transportation, which
driver.
we could easily pull that out, because it's already detailed under the
We
transportation
could
budget
pull
side.
it out, but it's not going to be easily done,
No?
no.
Okay, difficult, thank you.
Okay, Catherine, and then?
Just a note that I made earlier on in the presentation, in the same vein of knowing, there's 70 kids in boys basketball and 40 in boys soccer. It would also be helpful to me for the big picture to have the enrollment numbers for the schools, for the budgets, just to get that big picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all in the detail on the PDF. file.
Right. But if it was, in the presentation, if we do this next year,
Mhm.
that would be helpful.
Yeah,
I would
this
agree.
is a growth process. It's so
Yeah.
much more information
Yeah, I
than
mean,
we've
this
ever
is-
gotten. It's great, but I agree.
These are all small numbers, I totally agree, but I know from my review last spring of the entire budget of BCSD, that the athletic, interscholastic line item increased more than anything else in the whole district. Like, some of it, since
for district.
2000, most everything increased 2.3 times, and it increased 3.25%, when even adjusted for cost of living. So there's been a huge increase, and that's why I'm concerned with this budget. Like, why do we spend 3 times more than we did 10 years ago?
Mike, do you have an explanation of that?
2000, yeah. We have 2 positions in this interscholastic program now that we did not have in 2000. One is for for Dale Martin at the high school.
And what does he do?
He does,
Equipment.
he coordinates all of the
Everything.
athletics, all of the field preps, the gym preps, does all of the laundry. I mean, he does everything that's associated with those athletic programs. And then we also have the district athletic trainer that we never had, that was hired in 2009.
And that's for the safety of our students.
That's
in
for the
case something
safety of
happens.
he travels to all of the athletic events, or
As much as he can.
as much as he can between the two schools, or to the three schools, and provides training services for those athletes, whether it's in school, out of school, at the games, during practices, all of that time. So there's two positions, and those positions are probably $130,000 right now. That's going to be the majority.
Total.
Total.
Total. So that's probably the significant increase.
That would be the
represent
significant
that.
increase of what's happened since 2000.
Mhm. Okay.
But things like that is what should be itemized and listed, please, in the total.
Well, that would be in the salary budget, because it's a position. It's not a gate worker. It's a position that the district has
Oh, I understand.
across.
I'm just saying we're all kind of looking at what has the total cost, and so it should
Right.
include the salary.
Yeah.
Even though they may be listed elsewhere, that's where the information is.
Just an aside, you say there's a trainer. Is there a significant decrease in injuries with students over that period of time because of the trainer?
That's a good point. Good question.
Well, and there's also,
Or is it tracked in some way?
well, and I would say, as someone who didn't have a trainer, as a football coach for a lot of years, he does all the concussion testing, all the pre-testing, post-testing, making sure that those students are not put on a field in an appropriate amount of time. Back in my day, it was, what do you
Ready
think?
to go?
Because you know, and then if you sent them to a doctor, the doctor said they were done for the season. So it was one of those things where it's very important. And keep in mind, back in my day, we didn't have the concussion regulations from the state. Those are in place now. He also teaches a couple classes in sports medicine. That's also part of his duties. But it's definitely, I can tell you that, you know, the taping of ankles and things like that take place now to protect kids from injuries. The proactive stance is much greater. So I can't tell you for sure. I've never looked to see exactly how many injuries have decreased. There's a lot more participation than in my day as well. But I can tell you the concussion piece alone is huge.
Catherine?
Yeah, just to answer, just having kids that are in sports and knowing the trainer going to these games, I don't know if it would be interesting to check that, a decrease in the amount of injuries, because injuries are going to happen, but it's knowing that there's somebody there on the sideline that's trained that can attend to them right away and can, you know, do a concussion test, can look at the ankle, can look at the wrist, and can attend to it right away, rather than immediately having to go to the emergency room or something
Is
like
licensed
that.
to do so.
So it's not like the trainer as like you would go to an athletic trainer to run you through the gym. It's more the on-site person.
Medical care.
Or to go back and get your, you know, my son got a concussion, so he had to go back and get a concussion test. He failed, he goes back again.
Kurt?
I was just going to say, I would suspect that you've probably possibly seen better rates in your liability insurance. If that's district
Good
level.
point.
Yes,
Well,
I'm sure.
all I know is as a coach, if I'm making that call and I'm not a licensed professional,
Yeah.
I mean, not only is the school district in liability jeopardy, I personally am in. So I
That's a
mean,
good point. Have we gotten better rates?
Yes.
Great. How much? Is it substantial? Or?
No, I mean,
It would probably be cumulative over time. You're going to probably see that, you know, come back to some extent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, how long did you say these two additional positions have been on? 2 years?
no.
No.
Dale Martin was hired in 2001. And I think David was hired in 2009, something like that.
David is the
Athletic
Trainer.
trainer.
Well, the 3-time increase has happened since 2000, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dale
That
Martin is there already, so it's one additional.
No, Dale Martin
No.
was hired in 2001. So if you're budgeted, if you're projecting 2000 numbers till
The
2015,
line's just going to go up gradually. There's no like leaps.
okay?
that budgeted or actual that you're looking at?
I'm actually forget. I forget.
Okay.
Who's actual?
All right, well, it's 5:30, we've got a bunch of other stuff on the agenda as well. Is there other pertinent information to this discussion, Mike?
No. Lori, can you check the heat setting? It looks like it's at 74. Is it at 74? But it's reading 74 right now. Feels like it keeps getting warmer and warmer in here.
All right.
Because of the questions?
I don't know.
With that, we appreciate your presentation, Mike, and for all the work that you and the
I see what you're saying.
Finance Department have put into this. I think it's been very beneficial. Thank you very much. And with that, we will move on to application for study travel by student group Lisa Hopkins, Wood River High School Business Professionals of America. And that is a discussion action item. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, then do I hear a motion to accept the proposal for Lisa Hopkins and the High School Business Professionals of America?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion now? All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion approved. All right. The next would be a application for study travel by student group Kevin Lupton with the robotics team. And that is open for discussion now.
I don't see on here, it says that it's attached, but how much is being requested? It said that there's request for partial district support.
I don't know the answer to that. Paper was prepared by
Okay.
I think you have to recuse yourself on this one, right? Because it's Andrew.
Oh, yeah, good idea. Okay, I should probably recuse myself on this.
Yes, you should. She's recusing herself because her son is participating in this. He's listed
Okay.
as a participant.
I just, well, it's already been voted on. I was going to say, we didn't get the number on how much the district transportation would be for the Lisa Hoskins
Oh,
event.
that's true.
They didn't request funding, though, did they?
Well, they requested
Bus.
district
Little bus.
transportation, which is funding.
Minus expenses only.
So, anyway.
John, would you know what that supporting is?
Itemized expenses attached.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for your comments.
Val, do you have any information on that? I thought you were listed on this. Yeah, you were listed on one of these.
Says all travel arrangements will be made with assistance of Val Siemens this year.
Did you know that?
What's that?
Is that for the?
For the business one.
I believe the reason why I got listed on that was just to help coordinate the travel of it. It can be very taxing for those teachers to have to make those travel arrangements on their own personal credit card.
Uh-huh.
And so I was trying to offer them assistance from the district level
Okay.
where we could use our district American Express card. And then the BPA program would reimburse us for that, simply to help with the travel costs. I think that's why my name's on there.
Okay, so under funding, it says request district approval only. All costs will be generated by student, group, or activity. So I guess they're...
Except for district travel. Except for
Yeah,
district
they are
transportation.
asking for district transportation. And they're asking for the van to transport students to Boise, Salt Lake City to the airport.
Seems like we're going to...
Okay.
and then the
passed it.
because
So we have
of-
no idea for travel and hotel costs, or what the partial support is for this, do we?
And we know Val is going to keep an eye on that anyway.
For robotics?
I have trust.
No,
That's for the
PTA.
already passed.
Neither one.
Do we want to ask, even though we were...
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yep. Do you want to do it when we get
Uh,
more numbers?
I kind of feel like we do.
Okay.
Or,
Is this time sensitive?
Well,
yeah, it is.
Well, travel dates are 4/23 and 4/29.
But if they're making
But they're making arrangements
travel
now.
and, can we approve it, or is there a way to approve it based on basically asking Val to confirm the reasonableness of the costs?
I think that's fine.
And then if she sees that it's out of spec of what would normally cost, that she would report back to us, but we could give it provisional approval?
Yep.
Does
like
that
that.
seem reasonable?
So do I hear a motion then to approve the travel for the robotics team, Kevin Lupton, based on Val's assessment of the cost?
Yeah. I would, go ahead.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes.
Can I suggest that we revise our previous motion, or have a superseding motion, and to have the same thing with the Business Professionals of America, since we do not have an itemized expense?
Same kind of.
Provisional of approval from the business staff, specifically Val, of reasonable expenses.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Motion passes. All right, on to consideration of Conrad Brothers budget for Hemingway Elementary School with Mike Chatterton, and I appreciate Conrad Brothers for being here.
Okay, this is the addition to Hemingway Elementary School, as well as the addition to the music room. And what they've done is prepared a budget that we'll go through right now.
Mike, do you mind using a microphone or pass a microphone? Is that okay, since we're being webcast still?
Or you could mic up, just, Mike could mic up right
I'm going
there.
to do a lot of talking.
Okay.
These guys are gonna do a lot of talking.
Well, have whichever one of you might be Mike, could get Mike.
Somebody going to do the majority of the presentation?
I'm going to intro, Tom's going to close.
Got an extra one of these anyway.
So, what you have in front of you right now is just a recap of where we were, where we are today, and some information to support it. There's a multi-page spreadsheet that supports all of this information if you so wish to get into that. It would be hundreds of pages of stuff, so we didn't print one for everybody, but we can certainly send it around. When the RFP originally went out, we had a design that everybody was obligated to price for the entirety of that RFP, which includes items 1 through 7 in the top box on the first page. That created the baseline information for us and what the award was based off of. On the heels of that, we met with Don and some other folks with the district to fine-tune the details of what really would be going on at the end of the day. And it's very, very common for the design-build process to go through this process. It creates baseline information. It is the vast majority of the way there of what it is in relation to budgets, but there's always some fine-tuning in that process. And when we met with them, there was an increase in design and scope. The majority of this would be in relation to the music room storage area and the western tunnel that connects to those areas. The tunnel was not part of that original RFP. When we repriced everything, we come up with the number that is at the bottom of the second box. There is a $240,000 increase in cost and scope. What I can tell you is the original assumptions of costs associated with that original RFP are entirely consistent with our revised budgets, i.e. 1,500 square foot got added into the process. The original cost per square foot is very consistent with where we landed after we had met with Don and some other folks at school. Yes.
Just before we go too much further, I'm going to ask this of Mike. Is there a requirement that we go back to the bid process, or is this considered a change order or within the scope from a legal standpoint?
I checked with Bob Milo, and he said that as long as those adjoining rooms are adjoining, and the addition covers part of that adjoining room, then it can be handled through a change order in the scope of work.
So you're just modifying the original plan, you're not actually doing a completely different plan?
Right. I mean, if you were going to pull something, like if you were going to eliminate the music room and do something else in the school, then you would have to rebid.
Catherine?
So what was the original, can you just go back to some of the numbers that aren't on here? What was the original 755 bid, I guess, RFP?
755.
The top box?
That would be the top box on this paper. It lists what was.
Oh, got it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So that was the original proposed RFP bid. And what was the amount that we had budgeted?
Well, the original budget that we had set, even as far as last December, was 750. So it was right in that number.
Okay.
So let me walk through this a little bit, and maybe it'll help you. We had several different budget items within Hemingway Elementary that we combined to do that geothermal HVAC retrofit last year. We had $1.88 million for the geo project. We had $143,000 set aside to fix the east side ice problems. We had $96,000 set aside for the door retrofits, and we had $138,000 set aside for lighting, interior of the building, and almost $200,000 for daylighting. So those were the budget numbers that we were working for. That came up to $2,453,000. The HVAC project and all of the door replacements that we did last summer, we're at a little over $1.9 million. So we have a difference of $540,000 still left over in those budgets to go towards this number. Does that make sense?
Right, but even before we put that $750,000 budget last December, wasn't there another budget before that for the kitchen remodel? For the cafeteria remodel, I mean?
Yeah, it was the 750. It was the 750 number. Well, that's the number we've been talking about even since when we were looking at these numbers even last summer.
Okay, thank you. And then all these other new, the second box are things that just kind of came up within the last 3 weeks?
Well, let me tell you how, maybe Don Love and Don do it.
Does one of your charts show an outline of the school? There was a major, when we were talking about originally in enlarging the cafeteria and moving the music room out to the west, there was a major part of that process that we had talked about but never showed up in the RFP. And that's really the part that's added the significant part of the cost here. So if you're looking at Hemingway Elementary School here, this is
Not a little closer.
You could put it like there.
I'll stand here and then we'll see.
Okay, thank you. That's better.
I know the school fairly well. Okay, so we have the gym here. This room, this is the existing cafeteria and music room. And so the idea is to push this out. Now, there is an entrance here that exits outside the building, creating what we call the tunnel. It's just like an alleyway between, there's an entrance from the cafeteria. It goes out here and the kids go out through this this mostly exposed outside alleyway. When the music room is moved out, then that's going to increase the length of this outside alleyway. And so the intent that I'd had early on was to be able to enclose this so it's actually an inside hallway. And then that way we'd be able to have access to the music room off of that hallway rather than people having to go through the cafeteria to get into the music room.
Oh.
And then, and that also would improve our flow. Right now we have one entry and exit from the cafeteria, so the kids come in this door, they go back out the same cafeteria door to get their coats from the hallway, and then they exit the building. This is also kind of a security issue. It's a hiding place. It's a narrow, maybe a 10-foot wide passageway, which will now become more of a longer alley. Currently, there's a drain pipe here that kids use for climbing up onto the top of the school. And there's a great flat roof right up in the core of the lobby area, which we occasionally find indications and signs of people being up there. So the major increase, when I saw then with the plan, and the plan did not include this coverage here, enclosing the alley, the tunnel, then it was important to me for the flow of the school to see if we could consider, revisiting that and getting that enclosed. It's for safety reasons for kids. It's for a better flow of coming and going from the cafeteria. Now, in doing that, then, there's a couple other little things we realized that we could do at this very same time. We could have the entrance to the music room here off the hallway, but we could offset it just a little bit and being able to create two small rooms right on the hallway, one of which would be used for the kiln for the art room. Currently, the kiln for the art room, if you ever, and I'd love to give you a tour, if you ever come out back of the cafeteria, the art teacher needs to bring his stuff through the cafeteria and outside the cafeteria door to a covered shed area, and then has to wind his way between the wall and the outside walk-in freezer, which is maybe 2.5 to 3 feet wide, to get back to a door, the old closet, part of the old building where the kiln is located. And so it's really problematic. He's actually taken a drawer and he's cut the drawer down in sizes so he can carry the pottery pieces back in there. So we thought if we were doing this, that we'd be able to create a small space here where the kiln could be moved, which would provide more convenient and safer access for the art teacher. Then we would also, and this would help to create a noise barrier between the music room and the classrooms on this side, is to make part of this side of the music room, the kiln would be one part right off of the tunnel, and then there would be a small meeting room where we could work with small groups of kids or have meetings with parents and something like that. You know when you've been up to my school to have meetings that in order for us to accommodate anybody coming in for a meeting, we have to clear out the publishing house or clear out the mini computer lab or create a space. So those are smaller items that we saw. Can we do this in addition to being able to close in the tunnel? Then the final thing that I had asked for, if it's possible, would be if we could then, while we're building this, is to maximize the amount of storage here. And if we were limited by the fire lane that comes back out here, but if we could maximize our distance out to that fire lane, which when I look here, it really only adds a very small, it only moves it out a couple of feet. The amount of square footage it adds isn't a significant number, but it's some. So everything in the increase here hinges upon my need for having this tunnel enclosed to be part of that construction project. Now, without doing that, yes, we can still move forward with the project, which would be consistent with the original bid process. But it still leaves a problem, which is a safety problem, a noise mitigation problem, a traffic flow problem, and that I think that the added increase, the expense, is because this is a kind of a unique area. We have several roof lines coming in at different angles, and there's a few tricky things in there. So that's the history. When we came up to meet and they brought the original drawing for what Julian had designed based on the original RFQ, and then when I looked at it, and to me, part of the heart of it was missing. And so that's when I asked if we could consider throwing this back in. and coming back to the board to see about having that as an avenue. And so, it's kind of hard to see in this little drawing here, but for those of you who have been up and been back in that
If you want to see the floor plan and how it was described, we just put the sheet back. We got the floor plan there.
Yeah, we have copies of that here. This is the floor plan. Don, we have copies of that here?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to put that up on the easel and so the group could see it? Yeah. And you could turn it to the audience is fine because we have copies of it here.
Try to do here. First of all, I need to get myself reoriented. Okay, so this is the existing cafeteria, and this is the existing music room. And the cafeteria is being bumped out into the music room, with the music room being bumped out here, so the music room would have the same floor space that it had originally. We would increase our cafeteria space by a significant number, and as you know, that's important because we're currently feeding more kids in there than fire code. And we're crowding the lunchroom, right, as it is. The door into the current lunchroom, the school sits here, the kids come down the hallway, there's a little foyer here. They come into the lunchroom, go through the serving line. And when they're leaving the lunchroom, they're coming back out through the same door and coming out here to get their jackets. Right here is where the current door is, out to the outside. And so this part of it, there's a cover over, but it's exposed to the outside. And the rest of this is uncovered, and it's just a, we call it a tunnel because when you look at it, it looks just like a tunnel. It'll be a tunnel in an alley between the schools. What we looked at doing then was the music storage room was originally going to be on this side with the entrance coming in off the cover in the tunnel. Then now the outside door, the exit door will be up here at the very west end of the tunnel. There will be another access and exit door from the cafeteria here at the west end of the cafeteria, as well as the entrance here. There'll be an entrance to the music room off of the covered hallway also. And then what we thought we could do is buy this kiln space and a little meeting room here for working with kids or other needs when we have a meeting room by moving some of the music storage over to this side of the room rather than keeping it on this side of the room. We still will be able to have a significant, we'll still have storage which will accommodate what we currently have out here in the Connex container. But because we are giving up a little bit of the storage space and doing this transition, that's why I was hoping that we could maximize this by moving it out, which I think amounts to a couple of feet further out to the north on this drawing here. Other than that, everything here remains the same. And once again, the addition is to cover in this hallway rather than leaving it outside and exposed. And then to add the addition of these small spaces by shifting this music storage over to the other side.
Okay.
I guess this question would be for Paul. I see all the budgeted things, but do you know how much each one of these additional things in the second box, what the budgets would be for? Like, to enclose the tunnel, it would be X. To modify the music entry doors, it would be X.
Catherine, they provided one copy. You have one right in front of you, too. I think it's listed in there.
Oh, it's listed in here?
Well, yes and no. There's so many
That's by division.
aspects of it which piece of the puzzle is the big target one. We could supply a lot of that information. We could probably answer a good deal of this as we sit here right now as well. So I guess the question is what's the impact of the tunnel?
Money.
Yeah, the budget for it. I mean, as I was I guess I was looking through this one and not this one, but it seems like these are all lumped in together.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not specific.
Yeah, so
the tunnel is $50,000 and the...
Yeah, therein lies the master. There's several spreadsheets behind that for the big chunks of stuff. So, a dozen line items make up its own separate spreadsheet to see what scope of work makes up a tunnel, what makes up the west and south side site work, etc. the big picture is what makes up this 240 is the tunnel, the increased square footage, and some additional site work for drainage on the west and south sides. Those were not in the original scope work for the RFP.
Right.
We could break those elements down pretty easily by isolating the west site work and doing some deductive reasoning as we sit here.
Sure.
If you want to know what that is. So it's really,
I mean, it's a big number, so I would be interested to know how that breaks down.
Can I ask while they're looking that up, Mike? First of all, can you move that just to the right a little bit and angle it, like as though if somebody were presenting about where that metal thing is? You can go that way with it. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine right there. The next thing, what I was going to ask is, I mean, Don, you've kind of already made a case for why you feel this is necessary regarding safety, regarding need of space, this additional cost. Mike, can you make your assessment on that as well as, gosh, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Sean.
As well as Howie's about the reasons for the dry wells and water mitigation.
Yeah, I mean, when we met about this
The
yesterday,
necessity of it.
we had, in my mind, we have a major problem with ice dams on the west side of the building as we stay now. So if we start pulling out projects on the west side, we're still going to maintain those ice dam issues on the west side of the building. And the only way to fix that, if we're going to replace the asphalt, we better do all of the drainage underneath the asphalt now. Because if you replace the asphalt, you don't want to go in 2 years from now, tear up the asphalt and take care of the ice issues there. So what this would do on the west side of the building, it would take all of the water that sheds off of the building now that accumulates in big piles, and the kids slide on it and hurt. What it would do is it would make all of that water go to a central catch basin and be out of the way under the pavement to where it's not going to drip right down under the asphalt and freeze. So it's a safety thing as well there. So, and if we're looking at doing asphalt, we need to clean up what's creating the ice issues back there in the first place. Curbs and drainage issues with gutters on the building and downspouts like we have with the rest of the schools to get the water down into the ground into the drainage areas.
I remember the rest of my question. Thank you. You said the $750,000 was a leftover from previous budget that was unutilized funds?
500.
The 500,000?
Yes.
And then this additional 240, would that be, or 244, would that be coming out of the plant facility levy?
Yes. Any additional money this project would create would come out of the additional monies left over in the plant facilities.
And is it your recommendation that these are necessary changes that should be incorporated?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you fix problems outside of the building that are safety related, it's very critical to everybody.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I was on the original committee. Oh, did you want to say something?
I was just going to follow
Okay.
up on
Sure.
Catherine's
Sorry
request
about that.
So there's a net $240,000 increase. On the last page, the top 4 items, west roof gutters, north driveway.
Which page? This page? This one or this one?
Your left hand, last page.
Mm-hmm.
Second priority, additional work.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The top 4 items are included in this increased cost.
And the 240.
They're part of what makes up the 240. These total up plus or minus $45,000, which leaves $195,000 to cover the tunnel and the increased square footage construction.
Okay. And the kiln room and the meeting room?
All in this additional square footage is also the programming of that square footage.
Okay, so for the first 5 items in the box, it's $195,000?
First 4 items of second priority
Yep.
is about $45,000.
Wait a second. So I'm looking in this, right.
48.
Should be about 50.
52?
Yeah.
52, 53, something like that.
$9,000.
So,
So that number,
yeah.
that number is 240.
Yep.
These top 4 items
right here,
Mm-hmm.
are included
In that
in that
240.
increased cost, increased
Okay.
scope.
So
Yep.
it's
You
53-ish.
isolate these deductively, that tells you what the tunnel and increased square footage and floor plan programming.
Oh, okay,
So
because this
basically,
is,
the tunnel, music room, storage, and kiln is about
About-
190.
190.
right.
And
okay,
then
the first-
53 for the rest.
The last 4 are yep. So it's
Right.
the first 5 in this box
The first
that are
5
the
is-
190,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
195,000.
Mm-hmm. 190.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, there's like,
How does this impact timelines?
You may be able to answer this more than I do, but from what our conversations in the past, it's not going to affect the timeline of the construction project at all.
So I was about to say, so I was on the original committee, and there was a low bidder that was lower than, you guys by about 10%, and I think it's only fair to go back and give that firm the chance to bid on something that's pretty radically different here in terms of it's 30% bigger. The other thing is there was a little bit of a confusion before. I think that the other firm didn't understand that there was a date that we needed it by. And Mike, I think you gave that as one of the reasons why we chose this firm. So I think that needs to be stated up front so that everybody has the same information. And then I could feel good about it if then I could say, yeah, we did the best by the taxpayer, and I know that you guys have a lot of experience in the schools, so. But I think that that's only fair.
Do you have any information to add related to that?
Well, I mean, I think if we delay it longer, if we rebid this whole package, I mean, it's going to probably take 5 to 6 weeks to do that. It's going to push us into the summer of 2015.
So let's go back.
We won't be able to do it
yeah.
this year.
Well, so let's go back and ask the other firm and say, how fast could you get it back? And if it's within the certain time, then
We can't do that. We'd have to redo the whole thing.
You can't just
You
say.
can't say
okay.
this is.
Yeah.
yeah,
Put it all
I
out there.
You'd have to go back to a request for proposal,
Yeah,
because right now
Basically,
it's
this is
legally
thi-
within scope of
This
change.
is their information,
yeah.
and what the other construction company would come up with might not be the same stuff. So it's not just, this is this, what do you bid on that? Because then you're asking them to bid on their work.
Right. So how do we solve this problem where we had a low bidder and then we changed the product? We had a low bidder, we didn't choose them, we changed the design pretty radically, and then it seems like we need to make sure that,
Well, to me, it goes back to
Yeah.
Mike's initial statement about having checked with Bob Bilo. Because it's just additional, we're not changing the project. We're
Changing the scope.
They're changing the scope a little bit, and that can be done through the change order process.
Right.
And that's due to oversight on our part, not necessarily for the other bidding. But as far as the two companies that have the bidding process, and the other one was cheaper than Conrad Brothers. But there's also, I mean, the other company got the same RFP that Conrad Brothers did, and there was
So they had the same
They had the same information that we were looking for, that we would be judging those against. And so to go back and say, well, they didn't supply the date because they didn't know,
They didn't know the date because it was
That's
part of the
all included
RFQ.
in the
okay,
RFP.
I did
And-
not
and-
hear that. I did
and-
not
and
hear
that's
that at
why
all.
Yeah.
that's
Was
why
the
with
date
the
on there?
experience with
The date,
Conrad
you
Brothers, they
said,
know
we want
how
that by
tight
fall,
schedule we're
open
on.
by fall? I didn't know that. Okay.
Elizabeth, if I may add,
Mhm.
if I'm these other guys, I really, really appreciate you right now, by the way.
Mhm.
And it's very honest and real and with all the greatest intentions. The design build process at that stage in the game is an extremely difficult thing
Broad.
to value when it comes to bottom lines. One of the most important things to look at would be lowest overhead strategies and fee structures. And we've consistently been awarded projects because of that strategy. We are able to accomplish work for a lower overhead and a lower bottom line fee for the school than just about anybody. To put a number on a very preliminary design is an exercise in flushing out those answers, those questions. And so now I sound biased and jaded a little bit because I'm trying to explain something, but I think it is real and it is true, and we have been very good about carrying adequate contingencies as well to protect the project. And we have consistently delivered on time and under budget for everything we've ever done with the lowest fee.
Right.
And now we've gone through this exercise with these guys to come up with what really works. And I can only hardly stress how much work is in these numbers. And Troy has done an insane job in a very short while flushing out real information that we could go to contract on tomorrow if it were approved and say, these are good, hard numbers, we can get it done. And we provided a lot of options, a lot of information, and spent a lot of time with these guys saying what makes the most sense for you today to move this forward. And that's what this is really kind of netted out at the end of the day. And it's also provided a lot of information for tomorrow because there will be other things that somebody down the line will do. But in this process, we've created a laundry list of everything that the school really could and would like to do down the road. And now we have real budgets for them too.
Okay, so, and then I have just two other, thank you for that explanation. I have just two other things. We had talked about the kitchen, and then I don't know, that just keeps, I don't know where that stands.
Okay, I've had Dwayne come up with a schematic design of the existing kitchen being remodeled to where it would fit into a kitchen like we've all talked about in the past. And they feel that the current kitchen configuration right now would very well accommodate any type of a reconfigured kitchen with the new equipment and everything, the dishwasher, the sinks, and everything else. So they didn't feel like we needed to add any square footage to the kitchen to accommodate whatever you guys wanted to do.
So that's Dwayne said that? I'm sorry.
Dwayne.
Okay.
As well as John.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's, yeah.
The other thing, just for a second.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just, because I had just chatted briefly and, yeah, before. It seemed like the best idea was to bump it out a little bit, and I guess he changed his mind.
That was the last design that he gave me, what was it, 2 days ago, Howard?
Okay. And then...
As well as Conrad's fee was, if you remember when we were going through the RFP process, they were at 7% where the other one was at 8%. So the actual profit fee was % higher. And right now, if we do not follow through with the program this year, the project this year, the way the RFQ, and all design build projects are, if you go to a certain point, 30% drawings, and then you walk away from it, back up and say, we're not going to do it, we still owe them for their design times to get to the 30%.
So we would have to pay to walk away from the project?
Yes.
In other words, because we've already approved it and moved forward, and now this is just a change order to add on. And then also something that stands out that you said earlier, that this price per square footage of this change is consistent with the cost from before, so it would be reasonable to apply any other bid. Their cost would be probably proportionately similar.
I would certainly assume so.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it is very consistent. If that needs to be shown or flushed out in any fashion, we certainly can. It's an exercise in going through plans
Okay.
and breaking it all down. But that was the first thing I looked for.
Right.
Are we consistent? And we have been very consistent.
So we're not looking at a change order and a 1,500 square foot cost where you guys are now charging us double what you originally were doing. It's consistent.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Catherine.
I guess, take this for what it's worth, but it's more than a simple change order. This is $250,000, I guess. And I guess with me, and you all know this, I like the one-touch policy, two-touch. And getting this today and being expected to vote on a $250,000 change order is a lot, and certainly something that I would not want to make a habit, I guess. And I don't know what's to be done about that. The tunnel certainly seems to be a good idea, especially the way, Don...
The addition of space, water mitigation, safety concerns, yeah.
Right. So, that's not what I'm saying, but it's more than I guess, a change order. This is increasing the scope of the project, even if it's not adding a completely new addition or something like that, just because of the numbers that are involved.
Speaking of that concern, Catherine, I have a question for Mike, or maybe one of you can answer. We do have our next meeting on April 1st. By delaying the approval or final decision on this, is that going to create a scheduling problem? Or is this something that's so time sensitive that you're needing an answer kind of sooner than later?
My name is Joey, I'm sorry, the architect on the project.
Mhm.
The timeline that's effective between now and construction start date
Uh-huh.
is where my role comes in. And that's
Sure.
submitting to the City of Ketchum and going through the design review process.
Okay.
So where we would be if there was a...
Can you take the microphone, please?
Sure. So if there were a favorable finding of what we're talking about tonight, we'd be submitting at the latest on Tuesday, ideally on Monday of next week.
Okay.
There's no guarantee when you submit to the City of Ketchum or any municipality when you're going to get on their agenda. But
Okay.
generally speaking, there's a requirement of a public notice, and then you can add on, worst case, 4 weeks to it. So what am I trying to say? We would not be heard until, do my math, we would not be heard until the latter weeks of April, all right? And ideally, all right, you get an approval, and then you do the construction documents and build that set of drawings for the June 6th construction start date.
Uh-huh.
If we delay until April 1st, all right, now shift 6 weeks, now we're at May 15th, and in theory, safety factor, it gives 2 weeks to do construction documents, that's not feasible.
Okay.
So then what it does is it puts the team, like we talked about the 30% scenario, we did work with you, for you, and if it doesn't go, we get paid for that. There's this scenario of proceeding at risk. Do we gamble on doing the construction documents and believe that City of Ketchum is going to find favorable design review? I think they're going to find favorable design review, but I wouldn't be comfortable if we went to April 1st without working ahead on the construction documents.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so originally when I was listening to everyone in front of the room who presented, my question was, how will the energy of this design reflect the energy of the kids in the room? And in terms of, the cafeteria being the heart of the school, certainly the music room probably too. And I'm just wondering, we talked a little bit about natural light, and I don't know what you've thought about with, for that question in that particular, because it's in the middle of the school, so I didn't know, I know.
We all. So, ironically enough, I'm not sure quite how to answer that question in regard to physical aspects of this, but Troy yesterday said, get ready for that because it's coming.
Yep.
I'm not sure how to answer really what it is, but we do have a plan for that. It is itemized in here, but it's not part of this number right now. Somewhere we had to just draw a line and say, we're the bare bones. And so if it is a topic of, critical mass and it's part of decision making, I'm sure we can figure out something in some fashion. It would not be our nature to say, yeah, let's just keep adding stuff on. That's not what I would be suggesting, but if there's a critical component, and I said this to Mike and Howie and Don yesterday, we've always given a lot. We're always willing to give a lot as well. And we would go back to the drawing board, put more pressure on subcontractors. We have opportunity to go a little further outside the valley conceivably for certain very specialty items where we could drive the cost down to some degree. I don't have a suggestion there, but there are some areas that are really hard for us to accomplish here with local contractors. Therein could be an answer to how to get some of that in this budget and improve the design aspects without driving us up any further.
Great. And I'd love to hear. Yeah. Yes, great.
So, highly speaking of the City of Ketchum's planning department, and the lady who is their administrator has a student that attends the school, and she brought up that design concern. If you're making this room bigger, longer, deeper, darker, right, potentially, what can you do about it? So she separated her role and brought up her personal comments, right? And so therefore, as a design build team, we've got to assess according to our budget. What are our number one things to do? Safety. Number two, circulation and access and space and so forth. But then there are plenty of other items on the list. So daylighting was on the list. We explored above the roof of the cafeteria doing 2 different approaches. One was doing a dormer with windows either on the face of it, which would look at Baldy, or actually doing skylights on the dormer. A little bit more expensive to do the dormer, right? There was pros for how it behaved on the roof and shedding runoff water. And then we actually priced doing skylights and doing 2 different bands of skylights on the roof. Where we left it as a team in our own value discussions with staff, which is Don and 2 teachers, that we know what it costs, and the idea is, let's get the shell built this summer, let's cover the most prioritized items out of 10, let's say, 9 out of 10 items, or 10 out of 10, that's still on the list amongst many other things that are on the list for any future budgets that can be applied. It would be up to the following year, would be the potential to add those skylights. So we addressed it, we've priced it, it's just not in your current budget.
Okay. Yeah, I want a design that is cost effective, but also in an inspiring way. And I know that sounds like a tall order, but I think that's what you look for when you're looking for to go move forward.
And I wanted to take just a moment. We talked a lot about the first 5 or 6 items in this box, but I wanted to some of this drainage. I wanted to take just a moment to point out the safety issues involved that we're trying to mitigate with that. This area here is the playground of the school. It goes down here. There is an asphalt walkway that comes underneath this overhang here and this overhang here. Currently, there are no gutters on that. So in the springtime, when we start getting this melt freeze, then every night there is runoff from this side. We did gutters on the other side, which have worked quite well. We did that as part of last year's project. So every night in the springtime, there is runoff here, settles into ponds and lakes and freezes over, and then it is sheet ice in the morning. So the custodian's out every morning with sand and snow melt, and then he's back out it again tomorrow morning, because when the melt occurs, it just, everything settles in and we start all over again. So that's part of what we're hoping to mitigate on this section here. The other section here with the dry wells, this building here is where our dual immersion kindergarten is. We have 2 kindergarten classes here, and they come back and forth to the building across here. The current drainage of this parking lot tends to make a lake here, and the dry well that's in this corner is inadequate to do that. So we actually end up building a bridge with pallets in the springtime. Now this year it's been a mild winter, so we haven't had the issue. But we built a little bridge with pallets between this sidewalk and this sidewalk, so that the students, when they're coming and going, have a dry passageway. So some of this work for drainage and for dry wells is to help mitigate some of the problems we have with the melt freeze and the runoff from the snow in the season.
Great, thanks, Don.
Catherine.
Just one more question. So because of this, review process with the city and Ketchum and whatnot, it wouldn't be prudent to, maybe it's not even possible, to separate these 2 budgets, the 755 and the 243? Well, if we passed, if we passed our original scope, our original thing today, or if we voted on this, I'm getting the from Paul.
Site work and structural that's
Okay.
overlapping in there, that it just wouldn't.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
And then timeframes too.
So basically what I'm understanding is we either accept and pass with the addition for the total of $998,000, or we delay and pay the 30% fee.
Or you approve
Or
number 1.
you approve number 1 and you just
And then
don't
you're going to
do
end up
number
having
2.
to redo things, because the proposal on the second box would affect work that you did in box number 1.
Well, I did work to get to this point, and it's all part of the design build process, so there's no
Right.
extra charges for redesigning the tunnel or not.
Right, but if we only did the first part, and then we went and added the second part,
At a future
is there
date.
going to be an impact on the construction that was done in the first part? Absolutely. So you'd be doing construction and then tearing part of it up and redoing it if we approve the second portion next year. So there would be an increase of that 240 number if we did it next year. Because there's going to be a demolition and redo.
Construction partner and say, I bet there would be a request for a little bit of an increase on phase 1 if we know you're going to do phase 2 in the future, because we want to get the right foundations in that you're going to bear on, rather than having to dig out again.
Dig out and redo. Right.
Remodel foundations on.
Got it.
I bet you were in the neighborhood of 30 to 50% of that total increase in additional costs or compromised qualities.
Okay.
Tearing up asphalt and having patches.
So another 75,000, 80,000 because of that redo factor.
That's a quick gut hip check number, but I bet
Okay.
you could see it up there.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, because one of the major design changes would be going back to having the entrance to the music room coming off
Inside the cafeteria.
And so then,
Which would eliminate the
you know,
flow
if
issues.
we go back and enclose a tunnel, now enclosing
Mhm.
a tunnel would still be a great thing to be able to do, but it would then, we wouldn't have put in that extra door to the cafeteria, we wouldn't have that access into the music room from that side. And so at that point, yeah, I understand there'd be a lot of redos if we wanted to get back to what this plan is.
Well, and also just to confirm, like, clearly these things were not in that original request for proposal, but sometimes that's because as you get into the process, you see more efficient and you see other opportunities that are presented because of this other construction. And that's essentially what box 2, at least 190,000 of it is related to. Now we're noticing the extension of this tunnel effect. How can we mitigate that? How can we improve that problem? And that is what leads to these kinds of changes that would not be evident from the beginning bid process. Is that what kind of you were alluding to earlier?
What ceases to amaze me as to how these guys can create budgets so far in advance and make it work.
Yeah.
We've done this enough where it's pretty eye-opening to go, this is, it's a dynamic process, and then once the design construction team walks in the door, everybody that has a name on a plaque walks out and goes, I would like. And so all those finer details really start to come to light. And it's a really, really tricky process to establish budgets, issue RFPs, go through a design-build process, and bring it all the way home to this moment right now and keep it in some form of a reasonable box.
Okay.
I'm just trying to imagine what the space is looking like. And so I see it with a slanted roof. And one side is how high and the other is? Sure. Appreciate that.
You're speaking of the cafeteria, I believe.
Yep.
So when Don described where the kids actually pick up their meals, that portion's right here,
Right.
just off the edge of the page. So this, from here all the ways to here, it's doubling in size. This is the cafeteria right now. This is what it's going to be in terms of the seating area. I'm going to take a guesstimate here on height. You want to look the lowest height?
Yep, either way, yeah.
Okay, the lowest height is about 11 feet 6 inches, to 12 feet at the ceiling right now. Okay. And then the high end is probably closer to 20 to 21 feet.
And you're just continuing the slope of the current line?
This right here is all existing.
Yeah.
All the way to here.
Oh.
This is a new addition
Okay.
that has a flat roof on it.
Okay.
So we're taking a wall out and making what was 2 rooms, one
One
big
room. Okay.
And then taking what was a music room here and building a new room for it.
Right.
Right. Okay.
What does it look like on elevation? This is, if I'm at the north, here's the sloping roof, and this is the storage areas that are the new flat. If I come to the west, this is Baldy side and look at it. This is the music room here, this is storage, and this is the end of that tunnel area. So it all becomes one plane.
Okay.
And this part of the design is all in keeping with the original RFP drawings, there's a similar theme. This is the primary area that it changed.
Right.
In elevation.
So currently, we're carrying $56,000 worth of contingency in here. It's spread out through some line items.
Great.
Site work is always a tricky spot. We've done a very careful evaluation. Hopefully, I'm not pulling my foot out of my mouth later, but we do not expect to have subsurface ground issues when it comes to the site work here. Other places, you can kind of see it coming. So we feel protected. With $56,000 in here, let's say 2 skylights is $10,000.
Okay.
It's in the budget.
Okay.
If we can hold toe the line and not experience some unknown issues there.
So you're saying if there's no underground issues that you've put in as a safety floor, that you would be able to transfer those dollars into putting in like skylights or something?
Underground is only one line item, but
Yeah.
it's probably the most dangerous place out there.
Right. So in the event that you don't incur issues, then that would be freed up money to be able to put in the skylights within the current budget that exists.
Obviously, some things to flush out, but that is what I'm saying. And let's
Yeah.
say 2 skylights, $10,000, still leaves us $46,000 of contingency in here.
Okay.
We've done a good job on the front end,
Good.
done the work to this point, so I feel confident saying that.
Good. And at what point, you know, I've been in that room a lot. I'm there every holiday bazaar, and I work out of the kitchen, and I know that room real well. So it's a really claustrophobic, it's like being in an echo room, echo tunnel. It's terrible. And yeah, there's no outside light. It's really, now that we have the opportunity to create a different feeling in that space, I think that would be, the worst thing that could happen is just to make the space larger, but do nothing about the quality of that space when it's within a possibility to do so for hopefully reduced cost. So if there's any point at which, and I guess I don't want to see this opportunity go by, where all of a sudden you've got a roof on there, now it's too expensive to break it open. So if there's anything you can do up front, is that possible when you see that this part is doing fine? Okay, we've got a little contingency here. Excuse me. Here, you go and speak to Mike or someone and say, or to Don and say, that's now possible.
Can I say something before we go there?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and I'm just throwing this out there for discussion point, we considered those things when we approved this, and this is in a box 1 issue that's already been approved. And so are we now looking to rehash what we've already approved?
I didn't approve a box.
Well, that 7755 has already been approved by the board, and we all voted on that. So are we going to, are we looking as a board to rehash that and look for a new request for proposal? Because essentially, it seems like that's what we're doing.
No, I think that this is a very small change.
We have a new number.
We're talking about a quality of the space, not a stipulation so much.
Right, but the space is in relative to the additional budget is not at all. It's a whole different space that we're looking at.
I have a suggestion that might help clarify that.
Okay.
Number one, what I offer to do is include the skylights. It's no charge. I draw the skylights and detail it for design review, and we get approved for it. Because if you add them later on, we go through design review again, it's changed to the shell.
Great.
Okay.
Let's get it approved to be able to do the skylights. That's number one. That's the first step, right?
Okay.
Whether you do it this year, I think your design review is good for at least a fiscal year, right?
Great.
So therefore, if it was a budget issue, you can do it in a future date. Similarly, for this particular year, because I will draw them in it, right? Speaking on behalf of my construction team, correct me if it's not a good idea. We go through, if we approve the additional to the 998, right? We still have the 56,000 contingency. Let's be optimistic that by August 1st, we will know. The job's basically done, into August. If the money's still sitting there, we know what the skylights cost. Maybe we pull the trigger August 1st or 15th, cut the hole up in the existing upper roof, because we're not messing with that area of the roof, and get that done before the snow flies. That would be my strategic approach to see if it can happen this round.
That's a nice compromise.
All right, is there any other further questions, discussions by the board? All right. Then do I hear a motion to approve the budget of $998,677.55 for the additional items for the Hemingway remodel?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Thank you very
Thanks,
much for your
guys.
time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the presentation and preparation. And good luck with the tight timeline. Appreciate it, Joanne.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Thanks.
All right. Enjoy. All right. On to item number 7, consideration of any changes to be made to the approved fee schedule for copying and labor fee schedule for public record requests. Is there any discussion? Do we need to revisit, look at that, and change that, given our second touch?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, which was that?
That was the copying and labor fee schedule that we approved.
Do we have a copy with that?
Board meeting?
Yeah, it should be in your folder.
Yeah,
It was in
the
there.
last packet.
It's one of the pieces that you got, looks like that.
And it's what Mike presented at the March board meeting, and we approved.
Just one question, is this consistent with other school districts' fee schedules?
That was pretty much taken from the city of Ketchum's template that they utilize. But it is very consistent with a lot of cities and governments, agencies across the state.
Okay.
Right. Is there any changes that anybody would like to see made?
Nope.
With that, we don't need a motion to change anything. On to item number 8, consideration of school district funded sponsorship of Wood River Middle School.
Can I interrupt?
Certainly.
Did we approve it at the last? Oh, we did
Yes.
approve. Okay, I just
We
wanted
approved it
to
based on-
clarify. We approved it
based
based on
on
the
a
possibility of
contingency
making a change.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Correct. All right. On to item 8, consideration of school district funded sponsorship of Wood River Middle School baseball and softball programs. Mr. Blackman.
Well, I don't know exactly what you guys want to know, but I did go over and I did talk to the administration at Wood River Middle School. I did look into the numbers that were presented by the Baseball Association and what they're looking for, what we currently spend in programming at the high school, and the question I think that the board had regarding how do you then say no to other club sports and so forth. So where do you want me to start?
Just start where you want to start.
To start. Okay, well, the Baseball Association, to run those two programs, they were asking for coaches. They were not asking for equipment, but I think there's some other costs in there that I don't think they were considering, such as diamond dust and some of the things that are ongoing expenses. Right now, to run the high school baseball and softball programs in their athletic budgets, of course, that would include uniforms, more coaching than what they're asking for. That was about $11,000. So when you're looking at the coaches that they were asking for and the expenses, they presented a budget of about $3,700. If you look on the budget that they presented, they were asking for 4 coaches at $2,500 apiece.
That's 10,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay, so there must have been a
Yeah.
zero missing from the number I was looking at, so it'd be
Okay.
22,000 then. Was there
I
overall
seem
one?
to remember 15.
I was
or
thinking
something
like
that.
15.
15 to 20 is what I thought.
25.
And is the 2,500 consistent with their stipends for coaches on the Schedule B, which is the new?
With the middle school.
Yeah, please mic up,
Yeah.
Mike.
I was just going right off the presentation.
Yeah, it's on the same salary schedule, same stipend schedule as all of the other coaches at the middle school and the high school program. I mean, we took all of the stipulations that we'd run through, like the number of participants, the number of coaches, the number of games that they play, away games and home games, the number of weekends that they're participating. All those factors goes into account on where they get placed on the salary schedule, just like the track program, the football, the volleyball, the soccer program. So it's consistent all the way through.
Yeah, I was just looking.
And it's all based on Schedule B.
Okay.
Coaching stipends for the 4 head coaches, at $2,500 apiece. Like I said, that's $10,000. So umpire cost, it says here $1,560.
For the umpire fees?
Yeah.
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 Well, they would know.
So,
So it'd be about 15,000 is what we're estimating with additional diamond dust, maintenance on the fields.
Right. So as far as support for the program, the administration was very supportive of the program. They thought that it would take away some of the pressure that's being put on the track program, which is the only spring sport offered currently. And it's getting real tough for the supervision numbers with track. That's what all of the middle school kids are doing because there's really nothing else offered. As far as the club sports and expanding, it's one of those things where, like I mentioned at the last meeting, you might want to look at the fact that baseball is a sanctioned sport. I did check into that. It is Idaho High School Athletic Association sponsored. So it's a sponsored high school sport, and you can back it up, that way. Whereas a lot of the club sports are not, such as lacrosse, swimming.
If I remember right, there's 3 or 4 including baseball and softball, that are Idaho high school sanctioned sports, but not at the junior high level. So
That's
there's an
correct.
additional 3 or 4, tennis being one, I believe.
Golf.
Being one.
And those are the only two.
And then the baseball, softball.
Baseball,
So
those are
there's
the 4.
only a handful that are high school, but not junior high
So,
sanctioned sports.
by
Some
potential.
more programs that could come to you would be golf and tennis.
So if we approve this, there's a possibility that those programs could come forward at a junior high level request. That would be kind of, our question I think before was, where are we drawing the line?
But that was the same case when cross country came before the board to ask for that as well.
Lacrosse or cross country?
Cross country.
Cross country. Okay, so
Because-
we've already approved them.
Cross country was approved even before I came on the board.
Mhm.
So it's been a few years since cross country. I don't remember exactly when that was approved, but that was not a junior high sanctioned sport, and then now it is.
I just wanted to, point out, I think I would actually welcome, and I had a talk, we talked earlier today, I would actually welcome this kind of thing happening even more, where people in the community really put their heart and soul into something, they volunteer, they build it, they grow it, they show it's viable, they show there's need. My husband was at the meeting last night. He said that the room is packed. There's already 3 softball. It's especially important with the girls, I think, especially with boys, but the girls, too, feel comfortable with this sport. Also, the injury rate is pretty low. And you just just pointed out, the only other spring sport is track. And,
That's through the school. That would be all spring sports offered
Right.
in the valley.
Right, but, through the
As
school.
a club sport, there's other club sports that exist, like
Yeah.
soccer,
Well, softball exists.
softball, through a club program also.
And I'm not opposed to it. My biggest
Mhm.
hang-up is not so much just adding it,
Mhm.
is giving the unfair advantage of our students having it be a junior high sanctioned sport as compared to everywhere else is a Babe Ruth League. That's my biggest hang-up. And Lars, when he came in, said that they've had discussions with other school places, waiting to see what we do. I would really like an assurance kind of deal that others are going to follow suit.
I've actually looked into that a little bit, and actually got a letter back from Twin Falls athletic director. They would love to be able to go that direction, but financially, they don't see that happening. So kind of what I heard was, yeah, I'd love to be able to do that, but reality is, we're probably not going to cross over and take over the club.
And the other kind of question I have right now is, at the junior high level, or middle school level, excuse me, are there cuts in basketball and other sports?
Yes.
So there's
soccer,
cuts
basketball.
in soccer, basketball, other sports, but not for junior high, or there would not be planned for softball and baseball.
Well, I think there'd have to be at some point, because if 60 kids came out for 20 spots.
Well, I think our goal should be no cut. I think our goal should be, this is exactly where we want to be spending our money, to me, especially in these vulnerable years where the kids are starting to hear and do things that they shouldn't be.
Well, the problem is with basketball and soccer is that you have one team, because that's how many the other schools in your league have. And they're competing, and so there's not room for a second team,
And so
except
if you're
at an
gonna be doing
intramural,
something
which
like
is
that,
why we
that
have
would be
rec.
more of an intramural.
Yeah,
Which is what I love.
rather than a
I love
competitive.
intramural.
And see,
Yeah.
there's a slight difference between a competitive league that's approved by the Junior High Athletic Association
Right.
and the intramural that we would administer within house.
And that, to me, is the worst that can happen if Twin doesn't come in and Jerome doesn't come in. The worst thing that can happen is that this is going to be something where the kids are out there getting great exercise and, one team playing against another.
What?
I don't really, to me, I
We
don't.
would be scheduling through
Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth League.
So we're basically funding it for them to be competing in a club league, is really what we would be looking at doing. The other question I had is that, and maybe John or Mike can answer this question, I recall that softball is currently being offered 6 through 8 because of numbers, but baseball was only 7 and 8. And so is there an issue with access to equity and rules related to that?
Mike's done some research on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did check with Jonah and Lars both, and there's no equity issues as far as Title IX is concerned, because Title IX concerns are you have 3 different ways you can opt out of Title IX if you offer the same number of sports to both men and women, or if you can offer the same number of participants, male and female.
Oh, so it'd be a participant equality
Yeah.
because of that. Because I was thinking about it from a 6th grade standpoint, there's just like there's All-Stars baseball for 11 and 12-year-olds, which would cover 6th graders, maybe even some 7th graders, depending on when their birthday falls. There's an equivalent softball program that exists already that covers 5th and 6th grade girls. And so that's a club program in our community that exists.
And theoretically speaking, with the Junior High Athletic Association, if you are participating in a school-sanctioned sport,
You can't
can't
do the club.
participate in any other club sports.
Yeah. And so that could be potentially either trying to draw from the same pool or, I don't know, there's some confusion there about how that would work.
Okay, I got an email from Lars to help explain that situation on the girls' 6th grade versus the boys' 7th and 8th.
Okay.
His response was Babe Ruth is a 15 and under program for boys.
Okay.
And it's a 14 and under program for girls.
Okay.
So encompassing 3 age groups.
Go through 8th grade.
It's 13 through 15 for boys, 12 through 14 for girls. Until last year, we let 9th grade boys that are 15 years old play it, but it became too much of a hassle when we were actually taking kids away from the JV program at the high school level.
Okay.
And it said, bringing the 12-year-old boys, the 6th graders, would totally decimate the Blaine County Rec Department's 12 and under program.
Right.
And it's way too many kids to handle. And also for the girls program is 11 and under.
In
not
rec
12.
district?
In rec district.
Oh.
So if you
Okay.
don't offer the 6th graders, then they have no place to play
Okay.
when they're 12 years old.
Okay. So there's not an overlap that's existing,
Right.
but
That's
with this program coming in.
Like my son, he could be playing Babe Ruth 15U, but he's at the high school playing JV.
Mm-hmm. I think it fills a niche. I think it's this is the best drug prevention that we could be doing, in my mind.
I guess we're making the decision with the assumption that we're funding a program that will play in a club league, and that we need to make the assumption that it's not going to change based on a general feeling, and it may change in the future, but I think that when we make this decision, we need to assume that we're
Basing it off of a club.
basing it off of a club league.
I think a lot of schools south of us right now, to fund those programs is just unreasonable for them. If
We're
they're
passing
funding
override
rates
levies
that
as it is, yeah.
Yeah, and I asked that question before they passed their current, all the schools down there, Jerome.
Just got a
and
new
both-
levy.
Yeah, they just passed their levies, so the question, when I put the question out there, was before those levies were passed. But at the same time, at that time, they were feeling the squeeze financially and just didn't see that as a reality to go to their boards and ask for this kind of funding to fund those programs. They would love to be able to do that to make sure that they can sustain the feasibility of those programs in the future and over time. However, right now with the clubs running it, there's no expense to them. They're pretty much kind of out of that. They're providing facilities, kind of like what we are.
I mean, the other thing that we're sort of assuming, I guess I'm not assuming this, is if we choose not to fund this, that it would collapse. But my feeling is that even if we don't fund this, it will continue on. I mean, last year, because of the adjustments that we made by providing this field space, putting money into that, and providing for transportation. So we're still putting in a couple $1,000s to this sport. And so it's not necessarily that this is going to stop. if we don't do this.
You just won't have the
I think there is a
consistency of the
concern. I think there is a concern there because right now Lars is the catalyst that's carrying it, kind of like Ken Ward is for Optimus football.
Yep.
And Ken Ward is getting out of Optimus football, and now there's a big concern that it's going to just disappear, and we're not going to have football anymore for 6th grade and under because of one person, and because it's not, it's a club.
We went through the same thing
And-
with the rec wrestling program down in Cary. Because of my time on the board, I haven't had as much time to focus and help out there, and that program has
Faltering.
disappeared this year.
Wow.
So
I
the
can tell you
kids who
without
really want
Kenny
to are
Ward
commuting up here to do
in
it.
that football program, it's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah.
It will have a huge impact.
Whether or not,
One volunteer that gives that much of their personal time to that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible what he does.
whether or not there's
And I
another
think
person
Lars
that
is the
will step
equivalent.
up to do that,
Right.
that's yet to be seen. But we can't necessarily base it that, yes, it's going to
It
continue.
doesn't have an organizational program with a paid director like Satu Soccer, for example, where they have a part-time paid position and they have a very organized program in their club sport. Baseball and football are very one-man driven programs, or baseball, softball, and even the football program. And that's what my understanding is, and so there is a concern that one person can make it collapse.
Right.
Yeah, Lars's student will be in high school and be playing JV or varsity next year, not in
Well,
high school.
I definitely think, oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, it's because of that no man's land between BCRD
In the high school.
So it's that Babe Ruth is a different animal to itself. It's really not BCRD, and it's not school. So it's purely kind of based on volunteer and club.
I mean, I see both sides. I completely agree with Liz that, you know, it's the best drug prevention. Sports are great. We get a lot of people, you know, kids into after-school sports, and that would be a shame if it collapsed, if Lars stepped down and nobody stepped in. So I understand that, but I'm having a hard time getting over there are no other schools to play. This is subsidizing a school sport. I mean, a club sport. So it's not going to be a school sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's subsidizing a club sport for middle school kids to play in.
For our students to participate in.
Exactly.
Would it be okay
You know, and
using taxpayer money to subsidize something that parents choose to have their kids in.
Yeah. If it's, to me, that's, I mean, again, I want to say philosophically, as a board member, this is just what I want to be doing in terms of the whole child. I don't, you know, all of the stuff, is it a sport, is it a club sport? Are they going to be playing this team or that team? You've got a program that has been demonstrated to be wanted by this community, and I feel like, you know, for all the reasons, that this is something the schools absolutely should be doing for the same reason that we're doing track, the exact same reason.
Well, I kind of see it
Theoretically
too.
speaking along those lines, then, if we should be doing it, should we be adding more basketball teams so we don't have to go?
Absolutely.
But then they don't have anybody to play.
And then who are
You know what, and that's part of what we need to figure out, because
Yeah.
just because you're not in a competitive league does not mean you shouldn't have organized sports.
well, in that same vein, I mean, I don't have a problem if Fritz comes and asks, hey, can I have $15,000 to start an intramural school program at the middle school, because we need to get kids
I wish you
involved.
would, yeah.
You know, you could hire coaches for Frisbee, you could hire them for baseball, softball, but they're not traveling to play in a club league. Like, to me, there's a difference. So it's not the money, although I do feel, I don't know if I agree, but thank you anyway for your, you know, we could draw the line at it being a high school sport, but if this passes, I would have a hard time if lacrosse came and wanted, you know, I think you were saying this too, and wanted us to hire coaches for them. It's the same thing. It's getting 30, 40 kids involved. It's a proven program. It's been going for 3-4 years.
It's taking a private team, funding it with taxpayer money to play
in a club league.
It's the same thing. The only difference is that this is a junior high program feeding a sanctioned sport versus a junior high program feeding a private
Right, but
club
it's all
program.
about having kids
Yeah.
be active, whether
Yeah.
they're in a
That's-
school-sanctioned sport or
Yeah,
they're
but then
not.
if that's your justification, then you're opening the door for anything.
If it's cost effective, yeah, and I'm not saying.
But if your
you know,
justification is because it's a
Yeah.
feeder program, and unfortunately, we live in a state where other schools don't have the budget we have, essentially is kind of the way you're, I mean, that's essentially kind of the argument
And
is,
you're not only opening up for junior high, but you're also reopening it for the high school club teams.
So, and
Yeah.
I don't mind that as long as I can justify, are we spending, you know, and this is where the per capita, how much per capita are we spending and how much does it cost? Sure, you know, you're not going to get people out starting a polo pony team. You know,
Well,
that's
how
not
do you
where
know
we're
that?
going. No, because that's not cost effective. That's what we all need to, we can't make that leap. We can't say, we're not going to do this because it could lead to here. We need to analyze if that's cost effective. And I think baseball, something like soccer, track, those things are
Then
high,
you have to be
yeah,
careful
high
about
impact.
setting precedents, because once you set a precedence of allowing a club team to be funded by the school district, then if you say yes to this one and no to that one, then it's prejudice. And you have to be extremely careful.
and then your
You
Title
open
IX
yourself to
issue.
lawsuits.
I don't, if, as long as I can justify it according to the kids, you know, what they're getting out of it, and, yeah.
The only justification you have on that is by claiming that this is a feeder program to your high school
Mhm.
program.
Yeah.
That is a sanctioned sport.
And agreed with that, but if you say yes to a club team now in junior high, and then a high school club team comes with you, because
But they're not a
you-
sanctioned sport.
They're not sanctioned.
I mean, that would be the line. I guess what we're saying is, there's a couple ways to look at it. One would be you're approving this because it's good for kids and they should be in programs because it keeps them busy, in which case you're opening the door for everything under the sun. The other thing would be if you're justifying it under the point that this is a gap program from the rec program that then dies and then there's nothing until you go into a sanctioned sport. This is a feeder program into that. That would be your second way of justifying it, which would open the door to 2 additional sports currently, which would be golf and tennis, and that's it. If you're approving it under that umbrella, or the third option would be we don't do anything. I mean, I kind of feel like those are the 3 options that we're faced
funding
with.
through the transportation, and that's.
You support the program as it exists and hope that the volunteers come out of the droves and support the program and it doesn't fall apart like wrestling has or football might be doing this year because of one person stepping down. So I think that really you're looking at 3 options. I mean, that's kind of how I'm summarizing this down. I mean, does that seem reasonable?
Well, the first thing that you said, you were opening it up to everything. I don't feel that way. I
Well,
feel
if you're justifying it under the realm that you're doing it because it's good for kids, then you're opening it up to everything is what I was trying to say.
You're right. I disagree with that because you always have to put in the cost effectiveness of anything. It's just like saying,
Right,
well,
but you
built
could say
this building
lacrosse
so
is
that-
cost effective.
You'd have to make that argument to
And
me.
you
is all
could
I'm
say
saying.
swimming is cost effective.
You'd have to make that argument to me. All I'm
Right,
saying is,
I
and
know,
if
but
it
you're
is-
opening the door for those programs if you're
Right.
approving it underneath the guise of it's good for kids.
And if that's, and just really quickly, so if that's the case, if it is cost effective and it does help kids, yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah. Well, I understand that you're for it, but I'm saying as a board, I think there's 3 ways we could look at this and approve it. Is what you've described, which is because it's good for kids, and we're doing it based on cost effectiveness. And it
Thank
doesn't
you.
matter.
That's the second
Because that's
part.
the
Thank
second
you.
part. Okay, so thank you for that clarification. The second one being only programs that are a feeder to a sanctioned sport that we're looking at, which would, if we did baseball, softball, would also potentially open the door for currently tennis and golf, because those are the only 2 that exist. Or the third would be to support it in its current form and hope that the volunteers still come out and keep the program going and it doesn't fall. So does that seem reasonable that we're kind of looking at it in 3 different ways? And those are kind of our 3 options on the table for consideration. Does that seem reasonable? So,
And
I mean, we've
knowing
heard
that our previous budget would be increased slightly due to this.
15,000?
Yes, and that, so right now, we're talking 20,000 at the middle school.
15.
Well, no, 20,000 is our total expenses, including the athletic
They're asking for $480.
$480, and because stipends are considered part of salaries, that would be different, and so
It would be
probably
maybe 4,000,
like 4,000 to 5,000.
5,000.
Uh-huh, okay.
Additional budget increase for the middle school.
Okay, interesting. So
No,
that would
because
be-
the 10,000 would be under salaries.
Right, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
So now we're at 20,000 currently, that would bump us up to 24 to 25. At the high school, we're 119,000
Yeah.
in expenses. There's no comparison, and it's roughly equal. I mean, there's 75 more kids at the high school, but they're roughly equal size. So there's no comparison. You can see clearly in the numbers, to my mind.
Well, that's because there's a lot more sports offered at the high school.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
There should be a little, if problems are starting at the middle school level, you don't want that to.
Right.
They're starting even younger.
Yeah.
So I guess, can we just take each of the three proposals and talk about how people feel about them, and then maybe move this to vote, so we're not
Sure.
continuing to talk in
Sure.
circles? So the first one was based on, because it's good for kids, that we would analyze each program on a cost effectiveness, and it doesn't matter whether it's, debate is considered a sport. So now are we going to look at junior UN as a possibility, chess program as a possibility, you've got lacrosse, you've got swimming, those kinds of things would be what we'd be opening the door for under the Good for Kids cost effectiveness program. And then, you brought up polo, which somebody might bring forward, and we would have to analyze that, and it might not be cost effective. So I guess that would be consideration one. Can we just have some discussion about how everybody feels about that?
Well, I guess if we're talking about cost effectiveness, or, let's say it's $15,000 plus what for transportation? A couple thousand?
Which we're already paying.
Or what did we pay last year? Do you know offhand?
No, but
I think it was roughly 8,000 or something like that in my mind.
for transportation?
That was including the
including
diamond dust
transportation
and
and
Yeah.
maintenance of the
upgrade on the
fields
field.
and stuff.
So another 8?
My guess is for gas,
Yeah.
to transport those kids back and forth, you're probably into it 2,000 maybe.
Okay, so let's say $17,000.
Uh-huh.
And what, was it about roughly 100 kids?
Probably.
60, what do they got? They have 76 kids in it right now.
The season hasn't started yet. But there's-
Well, I guess the first thing we should consider is that something that we want to make a decision based on?
Well,
that's-
right, yeah.
The cost effectiveness.
But I
guess,
guess
Cost
what I'm
effectiveness
saying, let's
and
say
good for
there's
kids.
100.
Yeah.
So we're basically, it's
At
$170
$170
per kid for 6 weeks,
Yeah.
6 to 7 weeks. So,
They're out there every day.
In my view, in my opinion, you're getting on dangerous waters, opening it up just for, is as beneficial to students,
And is it cost effective?
and is it cost effective?
Right.
I
That's
agree.
opening
Yeah,
up.
Opening the door to a
That-
big,
that's
huge.
dangerous waters right there. If we're going to approve it, I would much rather see it under the guise of, it's a feeder program.
And it's covering a gap
Okay.
year.
I still have personal issues of funding a private or a club team, or a private team in a club league. I have issues with that. That's what fundraising, that's what other sponsors, down in Jerome and Twin, there are businesses in the community that pitch in donations
And
and
that's
fund in
taken
that
out from
directions.
them.
Right.
And that's taking away from the possibilities of that. We have an extremely generous community in Valley, and so you're basically taking away that opportunity for private funding and donations to cover that and putting it squarely on the base of the taxpayers. Granted, it's not a whole lot of money, but you're still doing it.
Right.
And the other issue is with this, as making it a sanctioned junior high team, we're going with the premise of no cuts in an area we're already cutting in other sports.
So
Well,
there
that-
needs to be
that's-
some
yeah.
consistency.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you get, absolutely, I think we should look at the basketball. If there's more of a need there, that's another one.
Well,
You
I
know,
think
that
that
you could-
initially, if we're going to look at, all right, can I suggest that, can we make a decision on whether or not we feel that we should approve this based on Good for Kids and cost effectiveness? Is that even on the table, or do we all feel like that's not on the table?
It is for me. It's about line.
Yeah, but, I mean, can we make a decision on whether that's on the table so that we can move on to the other two scenarios?
Well, I guess I don't really understand what you're saying, Kathy. We're either approving it or we're not approving it.
But we're putting it under an umbrella of setting a precedent for, on what consideration we're approving it, if we were. I mean, do we feel like that's why we're approving it? Or are we approving it because it's a GAP program?
I mean, I guess, what I would, like, in a perfect world, I would love to be approving a softball and baseball no-cut intramural program. That's what I would like to approve. Something that is available to kids after school, they go for 2 hours, that is not part of the Babe Ruth League. It just does not sit well with me to be approving something, to be subsidizing a club sport. If we approve, $10,000 to the middle school to do an after-school club program, or after-school sports program.
Intramural program, which would be like 2 teams that play each other, and it's
right,
exhibition.
They mix it up, they just play each other, they've got 50, 60 kids, they
well, you
can
might
mix
lose
up.
your interest because it's not a league.
You
and it's
probably
not competitive.
will with some.
Yeah.
You're probably going to lose. You're going to lose some of your high-profile baseball kids. But all those other kids that joined last year because it was after school at the middle school, my guess, they're still going to be psyched to have that program.
But are you going to have the volunteers?
No, we're
well,
going to
you would pay for the volunteers because you pay for an intramural program.
We're going to be giving, we're going to be, but that's a different vote.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's a different vote. And I agree with you.
And
if he was coming to us, saying, I've started this and I want to make it an intramural, that would be the best of all worlds.
Right, and we have 30 extra basketball kids that were cut, and
basketball, volleyball cuts.
Football, soccer has a huge number of cuts.
Right, so it's just.
I mean, then you're opening it up to. Yeah.
Right, that's an issue.
It's kind
I
of
think
a
it's a little
different-
bit easier in the spring because we've got, and especially we just did those fields, we have extra space.
And granted, track doesn't cut because you can have multiple relays and stuff like that.
Can I ask really quickly if anybody who's like diehards who are still here listening to this, if you have anything to say about it? I mean, you're suffering here listening to us, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. John was going to say something. I'd like to hear.
I'm just trying to look up middle school sanctioned sports. All I can find under the IHSAA is high school stuff.
You can't find middle school?
It wouldn't be the IHSHAA, or it'd be the JH or something like that.
I don't even know if there is
Basically, it's track, volleyball, basketball,
What'd you say, Mike?
wrestling,
I don't think there is
soccer.
such an organization.
As for the, yeah.
Are all our junior high sports basically
Unsanctioned feeder programs.
unsanctioned feeder programs that other schools have agreed to run?
I would say
Oh,
so,
yeah.
But
I mean,
that's
they could
the
be.
thing. There's no other schools for us to play where the other sports. There's
Right,
no
but somebody's got to go first.
Somebody starts somewhere.
But we did it
you're
first in
saying
soccer.
Soccer was not a sanctioned sport when I started teaching here.
It wasn't a league sport within the school.
Right, but what you're saying, the feedback you've gotten from other District 4 schools is that it's
They don't
probably
have the
not
money
in
right now.
your
Well, they'd
future
like
for
to do it.
budget. Well, of course,
Money-wise, they're-
exactly. Of course, they'd like to do it.
Well, just to go back to, in the event that we were going to look at this as a approval based on a feeder program, the other programs are cut, and if baseball and softball are not cut, are we going to have them back here next year saying, well, we need 4 teams for baseball and 3 teams for softball because we've had such a turnout? And then they could come back and say, well, now we need 5 teams, and so this could be, and then you have the baseball and the football and the soccer people saying, well, wait a minute, why do they get to have unlimited number of teams because they're in a club thing and we only get 1 team and you're cutting us? So there's an inequity there. So whether we agree that it's all should be non-cut, that's not the reality that we live in right now for this decision, because the reality we live in right now is those other ones are in a league where there's an A team for them to play. So we can't change that in this current form unless we're going to ask for I guess if we're going to say we don't want to fund this club program, and we want to task our superintendent, my new favorite word, my new favorite phrase, task our superintendent with analyzing the possibility of an intramural sports program that would encompass all of the current sports that are offered at the middle school with the addition of baseball and softball, and what the funding impact would be on that with the addition of stipends for all of those programs. I mean, I feel like that would be the alternative to approving this under the feeder program, requiring that there's a limit on the number of teams at the current level. Because otherwise, yeah, we're potentially, what if they have turnouts even this year of, 100 boys come out and say, we want to play baseball.
Love it.
And we've only funded for 2 teams. I mean, clearly that doesn't work. Right.
Yeah.
And you're creating a conflict with your baseball, soccer, and
Well,
football program.
And the reason why you can make as many teams as you want is because it's a club league and they're...
Right. But
and more teams the better.
we're approving, if we were to do it today, we would be only approving for the current level of teams.
Yep.
Howie?
Can you create a pilot? So say we're going to
Do it for 1 year?
1 year, 2 years, see what the interest is. Now you have a number of kids say, I didn't get to play, then you go out and you say, we're either going to create another team or an intramural team. But because there's many programs that have been put in place that just go on in perpetuity. It's like the football program you're talking about.
Yeah.
One person in a given dynamic can make a huge difference. So if you have Lars is driving this program, what happens in 2 years?
If Lars walks away.
Which he will.
That's the big concern.
Is there an opportunity to continue the program, or is it going to kind of fade into obscurity?
Well, and there...
A 2-year pilot.
Yeah. And there is an expectation that Lars is going to walk away because he's got a kid graduating out of the Babe Ruth program.
He's going to follow his son.
Yeah, and that's the issue with why they're bringing it forward, because it's potentially going to collapse.
I appreciate your comments, but I think the last couple of years, I think it's going to be popular. I think it will continue.
But the problem is not the kids, it's the volunteers to run it.
No, I understand that, but doing a pilot program, I think that we would,
But
I think it's going to be successful.
But under a pilot, you're paying for the pilot.
I understand that.
Yeah, okay.
I understand that it would be...
Yeah.
Other South Valley teams are going to be doing it.
If we did a pilot, if that might invigorate people to allow for them
They're waiting
to
to
add
see
it.
what we do
Yeah.
as a board.
Yeah.
And I could see that.
So we could do it conditional.
And then
That could be
reanalyze
it.
it in 2 years.
I don't think they're going to have the money. Everybody just went out for levies.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at, again, I'm looking for middle school, junior high, anything I can find.
There's no
athletic
organization.
association. So every sport we have currently at the middle school is a feeder program for the high school.
And it's basically in a league because other schools agreed to make it a league too.
Right.
So
we're the first.
I really like the idea of calling it a pilot and seeing if there's a bite from other districts by us taking a lead. It doesn't put us in a commitment, but it allows for, I don't know. I like that idea.
And what if they don't? Yeah, that's
What if they don't what?
Reanalyze
Well, then you reanalyze it in 2 years and say, do we want to keep funding it?
Yeah,
Do we want to keep funding it or not?
I think that's what it's really hard to take away money from something
Once
that
you
you've
give it.
already funded.
Yeah.
If we fund it for $15,000 this year and $15,000 for the next year, and there's 100 kids in it, could you imagine us really pulling that back?
Yeah, but why would we want to if we have that much participation?
Well, because it's our
Funding a club sport.
age-old question of funding a club sport and
Yeah.
playing in the Babe Ruth League.
When we started the football program at the middle school level, because it didn't exist when I came here for the first 5 years, when we instituted that, it was done through the Optimist football. Our schedule was done through Optimist. Jim King set that up. So we started middle school football.
It was a club that
We started it
transitioned.
And it transitioned. So we were playing other clubs, but we were playing them through the Optimist League because our league at that time was the smaller schools, Gooding, Buell, Kimberly, Filer.
And that's really good perspective to know that this is something that has been done in the past.
When we expanded and got bigger, then now those bigger schools had teams that we could play, and then we started playing O'Leary and Stewart and those junior highs.
And they had an established league that was through the school.
They had an established conference.
Team,
that
school
that we
league,
could join.
school
So then
team.
we
But
were
it
able to
started
join
as a
the
club.
Kenny Conference and start playing football truly as a school sport. But soccer was the same way when I came. It was an unsanctioned
club program?
Club program. Eric Larson was running it, and, we provided them facilities, but it wasn't a club sport. And then we took on the coaching, and we took on those things, and it morphed into that. It's hard for me because I come from a big city where every sport we had in high school, we had in junior high.
I agree.
And I went to junior high, so we had baseball in junior high, we had everything. We had cross country, we had the wrestling, we had the band, we had everything that we had in high school, we had in the middle school.
Yeah, I did too.
But that was, that was.
Big school.
I won't tell you how long ago that was.
Yeah, and given that background information of
I think you-
we're not
yeah.
setting a precedence of allowing a privately funded team to play in a club league, I'm much more comfortable doing the pilot program now.
I'm
Thanks,
just saying,
Tom.
it has happened in the past.
So,
However, this is not my decision. I'm just trying to give you my perspective on it. And I do think that, and I'm a pro athletics type of person, so you got to take that into account too. This is really, this is money that the board.
We put a pause on
this.
Yeah.
We need to pause our meeting.
We're going to pause for just 1 second if we can, please. We'll pick this meeting back up shortly.
I just read a great article in this.
Hey, John, I got to page through it while I was back there, and I was going to mention there's a cool infographic that goes with the article that we read.
Oh, yeah, the one that you sent me?
We talked amongst ourselves about one of the articles that was in here, and that's what grabbed my attention to it when I was sitting in the back.
This is, it's not always about education, it's about the new economy, it's about transformation.
No, like declining. Like bad. He's just sleepy, he's not eating all of a sudden, so.
She's going out tomorrow.
We have to make sure we write down the votes, you guys, if we vote. Yeah.
So, I'm done.
Okay. We will reconvene this meeting. So with that premise, do I hear a motion to accept as a pilot program for a couple of years?
2 years?
2 years?
Wait.
He's making a proposal. but
He's
gotta
making
vote.
a proposal.
And then we'll have more discussion. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, motion to accept with a 2-year pilot program and reanalyze in the, let's see, it would be after the 2016 season, so probably in the summer of 2016, reanalyze the viability of a school-funded junior high baseball and softball program.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Okay, discussion. So my discussion regarding this would be that this would be done contingent upon a board statement of saying it is a pilot program being done under the guise that we're looking at the sustainability of a feeder program that would cover those gap years, because this is a feeder program into the sanctioned high school program of baseball and softball, as well as that there would be a limit on the number of teams that we would...
You can't do that, though,
that we would fund. No, that we would fund, that we would limit the number of teams that we would fund to be consistent with baseball, football, and soccer, that we would only be providing stipends for 4 teams.
Okay, you got to be careful with that, because in the Babe Ruth League,
Mhm.
there are no cuts and everybody has to play. So you
Okay.
have
Which
to
is
be
what I love about
careful with that wording of it, because if you have 100 people participate, then you have to have additional teams
Okay.
in order to make everybody play and then follow the no cuts.
John?
You can limit the number of stipends that you will pay.
Yes.
You can limit the stipends, but you can't limit the number of...
So we would say that we would be funding 2 teams for each one, and if additional kids came out, that would be private funding?
Can I,
I mean, how would that work?
philosophically,
I'm
I love the idea of no cut. In fact, I don't think my daughter would even be able to do this if there hadn't been that last year. She was 12 years old. It's what got her into it. She is so loving this. It's what she wants to do. She doesn't even go to the public schools. It's what she wants to do.
Do you need to recuse yourself because of a personal...
No. I mean,
Okay.
it's like,
Yeah.
we're all deciding on things
Yeah.
that
You would
our
be
kids
playing
do.
under the rules of the Babe Ruth, so that's a no-cut program.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's what I like about
So
it.
how
and
does
that's
that
what I hope
work?
we get to in this?
I guess back to discussion, how does that work?
I would say that you fund, we're going to fund this many coaching
You fund
positions,
4 positions
period.
and
We will fund 4
above and beyond
stipends,
that, it's
period.
up to you guys to figure it out, how you're going to do the no cuts.
Yeah. I mean, whether they're going to have 40
Whether-
kids on a
whether-
team or...
Well, you can't really have 40 kids on a team, but whether or not you fund one coach for 2 teams.
oh, right, you could have one coach for 2 teams and, yeah.
What I don't
Yeah, I guess that would
understand
be a
is, what if they
possibility.
did get a third team? To me, that's a positive thing.
But the problem lies with, you have cuts with all the other sports that we're funding. So you cut for basketball, soccer, and football. And
You
if...
only provide one
But
And
two
you
wrongs don't make a
provide
right.
one stipend. So if I have a kid that didn't make the basketball team, and I
Right.
come up and say, you're funding 4 teams for baseball
Right.
so that they don't have to cut, you need to fund another basketball team so that my kid can play.
And I say, you better
Find 'em
believe
a-
I should.
Yeah, but there's nowhere for them to
I
play.
agree, but that's the difference, but I think that's where we need to be going. And
Right, but
philosophically, that
but you can't do that right now.
I know, but you.
So we have
but
to-
people can see there's not a place for them
Yeah,
to play. But
that doesn't matter. You find a place. You create one.
Yeah, but okay, so I
You have
think
an
that we should.
obligation.
I feel like we should look for reasons to do this, not for reasons
Yeah.
that might be pulling out of hypotheticals and not
Yeah.
to do it.
Well, I'm
Because
just
we could
saying
be
that
here all
it's
night.
an equitability thing. And I do like the idea of saying we would fund 4 stipends on the pilot program. And if a coach has to coach 2 teams,
For basketball, do we fund a head and an assistant for junior high, or just a head?
head coach only, I think. I think it's 1 coach for those.
Because high school's a head coach and a JV coach, so there's 2, but for junior high,
Yeah.
I didn't.
And again, and I point to the inequity of the middle school sports. I don't know. That's just where I stand on it. You
I
guys
just think
know where
it's
I
a
stand.
sticking point potentially that could get us in trouble down the road unless we limit the number of stipends. Because there's nothing to say that a coach can't have 2 teams.
Girls basketball at the high school?
They have probably 3 teams.
Girls basketball?
They have
Varsity, junior varsity, and freshman.
at the high school.
At the high school.
No, I'm
At the
talking
middle
about the middle school.
Middle school, they have,
Huh?
I don't know.
If they have girls basketball?
They have girls basketball.
They have a 7th grade team and an 8th grade
now,
team,
I
don't
know
they?
with junior high, I believe with Cary, I think they have an A team and a B team, but tournament time, they only have 1 team.
I was just curious if
But
they,
the same coach.
you know,
Yeah.
So we're saying with this
I haven't really looked into it.
motion that's on the table, that if lacrosse came to us next month to be funded,
And it was cost effective.
Mm-mm.
that it
Base-
would
It would
not
be
be
no.
on the table because it's not a feeder program?
Oh, I see.
Because
Yes.
it's not a high school sanctioned.
It's not a high school sanctioned sport, and it's not feeding into it. That is my proposal, that that language be part of the decision, that it's not a good for kids, cost-effective decision. It's a sanctioned sport only and a feeder program only decision. That we're putting that box around the decision for this pilot.
I guess
That would be that's
the
my
problem
preference.
I have with it. Well, I got 2 problems. I have I can't get over the subsidizing the school sport. I guess
Yeah.
I
sport,
really had issues with that, too.
and I have problems with
Yeah.
putting that box in it. And so
Mhm.
that's how I feel.
Okay.
I had issues with the club sport as well, until I heard that
That's how football
that's how
started.
football
That's how
started here,
soccer
that's how
started.
soccer started
That's
here.
the
how
evolution.
cross-country
There's already
started.
That's how
been a
cross-country
precedent
started.
That's how they all
in
evolved.
our district of doing it.
But there were other teams in District 4 that were still.
Now,
No.
now, when-
No.
when we started football, there wasn't.
Well,
It started
I
as a
guess
club.
From the forecast that I heard from John,
And soccer, actually.
about down the road, about schools,
Yeah,
not
But funding could
having the
change.
money
I mean, we
for the
don't know.
change, and if there was even one other school, because it's not going to be a school sport, because there's no other schools to play. It's a.
But we don't know that that's going to be, that's why it would be a pilot.
So it's evolution. So is that in 2 years? I just don't.
That's
Yeah.
why we reanalyze in 2 years to see if other schools came up with the funds and funded it or not, and then
Yeah.
reanalyze at that point.
And that would be part of the decision for doing it. Is it a pilot program for reanalyzation in 2 years to look at the possibility of an established league with other schools that we currently compete with? I mean, that could be part of our motion, is under that guise. John?
You start dominating and kicking their butt, they'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know where funding is going in 2 years. I mean, it could be back to a property tax base instead of a sales tax base in 2 years, in which case they might have the funding. I mean, who knows what could occur in 2 years, and so that's why, I mean,
There's a precedent for
there's
the
a precedent because football and soccer started club on club, funded by the schools. Both of those programs did. There was no league for them to play in.
I was actually here, me and Jim King actually got it reinstated. In the 8th grade is where we had to start, and then we had to work our way back. So it was like pulling teeth. I mean, it was a long, hard discussion.
And based on that premise, that precedent that's already been set, as our district being a leader and other districts following suit, there's a distinct possibility that this will happen. No guarantees.
That's why we call
But
it a
that's why
pilot.
it's a pilot program, and we reanalyze in a few years, 2 years.
Want to do a vote?
Is there any,
Well-
let me say, is there any further discussion before we call for a vote?
Can you write down exactly what we're voting on, and so we have the language right? And that we are in agreement of the language before the vote?
It's good to be clear.
Accept Wood River Middle School
Uh,
To pay or to sponsor?
I just feel like we're hanging
baseball.
on, it's a pilot program in the group supporting it. I don't know, something just.
Imagine if Lars steps away. Imagine dozens and dozens of kids.
That-
Yeah, that's
Then
the,
we task our superintendent to, Fritz, to say, hey, put
Intramural.
together a
Mhm.
baseball and a softball intramural
Funding for
program.
stipends.
It's that's a different thing for me.
I see what you're saying. I still like it.
Well,
I see what you're saying,
so,
yeah.
so let me say this. We could task it for 1 year instead of 2, with the idea that we, in the interim, investigate an intramural program for the next school year, the establishment of an intramural program regarding costs and structure, and then that way it gives us an opportunity to compare the two. We have it this year. Compare it for establishment for next school year. Or if we can't do it next school year, then we could extend this 1 more year while we continue to investigate if it wouldn't go into effect till the following year. I mean, there's nothing that says we can't do what you're suggesting, but this covers it for this year and showing our support with the possibility of turning it into a different kind of program. I mean, that's why it's a conditional approval for a pilot. I mean, what do you think about that?
It's an interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Because,
So I just got to change the motion.
huh?
So I changed the motion I just wrote down. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. I don't think we necessarily have to change the motion, because the other part of this would be a separate, we're tasking him with looking into an intramural program.
That's
That would
a
be
great idea.
separate of this
I guess
motion.
is it pilot because not because we don't think it's going to be successful, but is it pilot because we're waiting to see if other
If those
Other
schools bite,
suit.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's going to be a successful program as far as.
Right,
we're
that's
Yeah.
what that's what
We're
I think
seeing
it's
whether
gonna
or
be
not
a
it's going to be.
successful program.
Yeah.
We're waiting to see whether the South Valley
Yeah,
bites on it, and if that league is formed, then it would go back to 1 baseball, 1 softball, just like it is with volleyball, basketball, every other.
and we would still look at the intramural
we
program
would
as
still
a,
look at the intramural program for
second-
those who did not make that cut.
yeah.
Right, because it would obviously be a lot less money if we're going to have 1 baseball coach, 1 softball coach,
Mhm.
that's $5,000
Yeah,
compared
to 10.
so 15.
Well, no, 15 was with
Well,
other costs.
Yeah.
And they would travel
Yeah.
probably
So this
together.
would
The
be
coaches will be 4
a
coaches.
one-year
and
pilot
2 veterans.
program.
1 year.
I would say 2 years, give the other leagues, other towns a chance.
Yeah.
to
And
do
in
it.
the
They might
interim-
not- They're going through their budget process right now for next year.
Yeah, they
and
wouldn't
might
have an
not
opportunity
funding in
yet.
the budget for next year, but they might have it and
But-
plan for it in the year following. So that's why
Yeah.
it's 2 years.
Because they could already be past a certain point where they couldn't find the funding for next year, because they, we're already in our budget process and we don't know where the other places are.
So
And that would give us more time to look at if we want to go down the road of an intramural program, because the idea of having that ready to go for fall sports right now is pretty unrealistic.
And then you're also going to have to be purchasing equipment for football and other.
And you're
stuff
going
like that.
to, then you're going to have to do an
Your
analysis of
athletic
gym
budget is going
space,
to
field
greatly increase
space.
For the short term.
I mean, there's a lot of other factors that go into the intramural portion, with just facility space to support that too.
I mean, I, was more thinking of the spring intramural when there's grass
Yeah.
and not
Well, but
taking
if you
up.
do-
Yeah, but if you're going to do intramural, you've got to look at it as a big
Right, I know.
package.
So,
Yeah.
so that kind of helps with one of my issues. My other thing is this box of being the feeder program and having other, lacrosse coming in.
See, but lacrosse would not fit underneath that, guys, in
Well,
that box.
Yeah.
That's what I.
You don't necessarily like the box.
I don't necessarily like the box.
Yeah. The suggestion of the box of only
Just
feeder
because,
programs. Yeah.
Right now, that is 30, 40 kids
Yeah.
that are out there.
Well,
Well, if-
lacrosse is petitioning the state to become a sanctioned sport.
So if they became a sanctioned sport, then it would work.
But
But it's not just lacrosse.
Is having a hard time
There's
getting
lacrosse.
field space.
Yeah.
There's swimming.
There's
Cross country,
I-
Nordic.
there's Nordic, there's
Skiing, there's-
yeah.
Swimming.
Yeah. There's
Hockey.
chess. There's
It's
I know.
tons of clubs that could fall under. Yeah. So the box is only there as a protection to the board to not open Pandora's box into this big, huge abyss. Or protection not to the board, but to the school district and its budget.
and the taxpayers.
It's really a protection to the budget. As a first step, and there's nothing that says the box couldn't be removed in the future if we changed our minds. It's just creating a budget,
A sustainable budget.
a sustainable budget ceiling, if you will, on a potential expansion.
I mean, you could, if the board wants to look further at budgetary issues, you could continue your current support, or you could, limit it to the 4 coaching positions and expand it. You've got some choices in front of you. You may want to look at your budget further, I don't know. But if you wanted to do it this spring, I imagine the time. it's
Do
getting
we,
more time
do we have the budget to be able to do it this spring?
It would not be this spring, it would be next, despite.
Well, that's a good question, Kathy.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
This year.
Well, do we have the ability to amend our current budget to fund it for this spring?
We would have enough in the current budget to where we wouldn't have to amend it and still be fine, because there's been enough attrition from salary schedule A to salary schedule B with the transition of new coaches.
Okay.
To cover the cost.
So right now, under our current budget, we could fund it for this year,
Yes.
right now. We could start this starting this season as the first year. Okay, what do you have?
Okay.
What do you have written, Sean?
I'm dying here.
I have a motion to accept
I know these
Wood
guys
River
are
Middle
too.
School baseball softball pilot program for 2 years, funding 4 stipend
How's your
positions
lunch?
under guise of it being a feeder
Was it
program
good?
for the high school sanctioned sport feeder. High school sanctioned sport.
Is it just the 4 stipends, or is it 4 stipends and expenses associated that we're already
Well,
covering?
we would be funding the pilot program with 4 stipend positions.
Does that make it clear that we would pay for transportation? But we're already doing that, and we've already
We're doing
approved
that,
it?
and
Okay.
We've already approved that, and we're.
What if they're going
we're
to come with
approving-
equipment costs?
Well, the equipment costs are part of it, and they're going to do some
Is it-
private,
They weren't asking for equipment.
Okay, so just the 4 stipends?
yeah.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Liz made it.
Oh, I'll second it.
Catherine.
Someone writing that down since Lori's.
You want to write it down right there, since you have the wordage? The verbiage, wordage. So Liz first, Kathy second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Say it.
It's okay to say no.
Yeah, you can say no. Absolutely.
I don't like to see all these hands.
Yeah, I gotta say nay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Motion passes with a 3 to 1
Speak your
vote.
conscience.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the lively discussion that we've had.
We're not
for
even done.
An hour
Oh, my God, we're not done.
about that. And with that, that concludes the open portion of a meeting, and we will be convening to closed executive session. So we will excuse the.
Tim, you don't
public.
have to stay.
Thank you.
You can turn everything else down.
Please, what's
Take
that?
a-
Holy cow.